Right, I will call the work session for the Orem City Planning Commission to order at 4:39 on March 19th, 2025 in the Orem City Council chambers. And we will begin with a discussion, continuing our discussion on the general plan update.
Thank you. So,
Main meeting. Yeah.
all right.
But
I
thank you
apologize.
for volunteering. Sorry, Jared, I didn't
Oh,
mean
you're
to
fine.
interrupt.
You're fine. It's your meeting. You take all the time you want. I'm good. Just a quick update. We had planned to put this in the Google Drive for you to be able to see. I was not able to share it. I'm going to have to get some things allowed because not all your Gmail addresses, they're not orem.gov addresses. So the system didn't want me to let it outside from my thing, but there's a way to adjust the settings, I understand. So I'll get that done today. We'll share it out to you. So you'll have a digital copy of it as well. You should have a paper copy of a draft intro there that we can go over today and talk about and make sure we're headed the right direction for you. I thought we'd go over some of those things and then talk about the land use segment a bit as well.
Hold on one second, Jared. Can we
Sure.
get the mics a little louder? Because I'm having a hard time hearing
I'm always
Jared.
paranoid that I'm going to be too loud, so I backed it up further today.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't want to blow
Well, I'm
you all
not even
away.
like barely hearing myself. That's probably right.
Okay.
Can you guys hear? Okay.
All right. So to start with, just a quick recap of the timeline and just to make sure we're all still on the same page. There are 12 commission meetings before September, so we did feel like last time we talked, we would try to meet on the 2nd. We don't have any regularly scheduled items because that was not on our regular calendar, but we could have just a work session and we'll notice that work session if you're all still okay to meet. I understand it's spring break.
We're good.
Is everyone still able to come? Okay. So we'll plan to still do that if you can because we need the time as much as we can. So we'll plan to still have a meeting on April 2nd. There'll be a work session only. And we will be able to put stuff in the Dropbox this week. So you should plan to be able to see the drafts, at least the first part of the drafts of the land use section in there before the meeting so we can talk about it and really get some work done that night. Just a quick reminder as well, the reason we want to have that April 1 so we can talk about land uses so that we stay on track. We're just a little bit behind in how we wanted to do it, but we can make that time up with that April 2nd meeting and keep on moving toward housing. We want to update the city council at that point, see where we're at to make sure everything's still flowing the right way. Transportation would then be in May and water in May. Some other elements in June, back to the city council. We keep on finishing the things out so we can get to the council in August and make sure that we are ready for final draft reviews with all of you in September and be adopted in October. So the timeline is still intact. We haven't messed it up completely yet. I'm hoping not to. So we'll work hard on the land use element coming up this week and make sure we have stuff for you to review. Is everybody still comfortable seeing stuff in the Dropbox? You want us to we can do a test as well, make sure you're seeing everything okay and that you're able to comment on it. So we'll do like a test run maybe tomorrow or Friday. So we'll send this introduction out and you can send us any comments you have from tonight, even if we get most of your comments tonight. Okay. With that, let's talk about the introduction, the draft. And you've got your paper copies there. And I thought we could go through just part of it and talk about the overall theme and the way it's structured. First of all, the way we took this draft to look at the intro, and please feel free to jump in whenever you want. I'm going to be talking a lot and I hate that. So jump in and ask questions or make comments whenever you want to. The theme is kind of Family City USA. We thought that's probably going to be the subtitle of the general plan as we move forward with the draft, unless something else comes up that people want to do. But for now, we're using that as the working title. That first statement does include just a little bit of, it's not, I would call it history. It's just a reference to where the city began and where it took its name, et cetera, to kind of grab your attention. Talks a little bit about its history and then talks about our future and looking at the city as Family City USA. So it's pretty simple, just a real opening paragraph kind of deal. Any questions about that little tiny segment? It's just a little bit. There's more history later on, as we'll talk about with the land use section as well. But the next segment we did want to do was just an overview of the history. Based on our conversation a couple of weeks ago, we thought we ought to at least have a brief overview of the history at this point to kind of demonstrate, because it ties into some of the things that we're looking at as a city going forward. in this intro even. So the history overview, if it's all right, I'll just read that segment. So if it makes sense to you, if there's stuff that we're not including in this brief overview, we can stick it in there, put it back in. But we removed a lot of the stuff to have in the appendix. And then we need to talk about the land use segment today as well, because there's a lot of history in the land use segment talking about development history of the city. But this is just a little bit of the history of the city. The need for a reliable water system led to Orem's incorporation, with residents using bonds to address the area's water shortage. Unlike many Utah towns, Orem developed through homesteads along major roads rather than clustered city blocks. Construction of the Geneva Steel Plant in the 1940s spurred industrial growth on the west side, transforming Orem from an agricultural community to an employment hub. The plant operated until the early 2000s and is now part of a redevelopment project in Vineyard City. Cultural growth in Orem was significantly influenced by the Sharon Community Education and Recreational Association, SARA. That's a mouthful to say the whole name, by the way, so they shortened that. Established in 1933, which fostered a strong sense of community and inspired other cultural organizations like the Hale Center Theater. Orem became a commercial center for Utah County thanks to the State Street retail corridor and significant population growth. The city's zoning ordinance in 1946 designated the entire State Street corridor for commercial use, attracting numerous businesses. For more detailed history, please see Appendix A. So it's very, very brief. If it's too brief, this is the time to tell us, and we'll add more to it. But we just thought a quick overview of kind of how the city really came to be in this point. And some of those points you'll notice as we talk about it, we mentioned Sarah, and you're going to see the Heart of Downtown mentioned later on in here, as we're trying to create a cultural and arts center for the downtown area. So Sarah plays a part in that, and just like it plays a part in Orem's history. So that's kind of, as we talked about, trying to tie the history of the city into where we're headed in the future, or where we're trying to get to with this plan. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Do you want us to comment, inject, or go to the online stuff?
You can do it online, or you can comment here too, and I'll make notes and we'll get it done fast and move on to land use. So
Yeah, I just, in the first section, I was kind of thinking, instead of growth and development, about future. I really don't think
future growth.
all the plans that have been discussed in the campaigning has ever been about growth, since we're kind of built out.
So do you mean, as it says, as Orem plans to manage future growth and development, or what are you saying?
Yeah, I would say more about, manage our future.
I see.
And then in the history, I like it. I would be a little more chronological, not instead of bouncing around. But I would also maybe denote the influence of BYU and UVU, because that also is what brought it. Word Perfect easily had as much impact to the development and growth of Orem as Geneva did.
Yeah, those are good comments.
UVU, I think it's definitely worth mentioning.
Yeah. So when we talk about it, UVU is still one of the few influences that we've got listed here that is still impacting what we do and who we are. So I would make sure that they're quantified within that.
And Word Perfect you mentioned as well.
Yeah. Because I don't think Geneva really transformed us from an agrarian community. It was Word Perfect. The orchards were strong when the steel mill was running strong too. You didn't see as much. It was the redevelopment for more of a technology center that kind of changed Orem more than anything.
Yeah, that definitely has a different flavor. It's kind of interesting to have a town with the influence of steel mills and high tech like that.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think
Do you remember when Geneva
2000s.
Steel closed?
Yeah,
Early
I think,
2000s.
yeah, it was early 2000s.
It had slowed way down by then, though, correct?
Were they still in business then in 2000? Huh.
I worked on the kettle in the late 90s, grouting the kettle, mid to late 90s.
Then you identify the Hale Center Theater,
Uh-huh.
which is now leftist.
Oh,
So
Sarah.
I
Yeah.
guess,
Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh, that is fine. Sorry, yeah. I would say Hale maybe not as much.
We can, that's something to consider. Do you
And-
want to shun?
I might go to what is the amphitheater and the Sarah, make that
Sarah.
more
More prominent than
a
the hail.
significant and prominent thing than hail.
Yeah, just from a writing tone perspective, this paragraph should be setting the stage for what we want the future to look like and highlighting what aspects of historic Orem we want to tie to future
Okay,
Orem.
so stick with like UVU as opposed to BYU, right? And Sarah as opposed to
Opposed to
Hale.
Hale.
which is go-
And
makes
that,
sense.
yes, agriculture is still a big, I mean, we have lots of orchards still in
Right.
Orem. There's still a lot of, that's still important to us and, you know, kind of pulling out what are the things from our history to highlight that sets
The
us up.
things we don't want to forget.
Yeah.
Because they're still prominent in us, like the Sarah. I mean, it is still a major focal point and will be called out in the arts district,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
I had one comment for the Family City USA. It says, meanwhile, Orem has earned accolades. I changed that to like in recent years,
okay.
just because we are that, but to say that we continuously rank high in the best places to live in the country.
Okay, great. Those are good comments. Thank you.
Is there anything we want to mention by means of some of these things that have led into some of the challenges that Orem faces? Like with these developments of these things, this brought in a lot of families that wanted to come around and stay around, and and then mention like traffic, or is this just doing like historical context?
I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. I hadn't really thought about it that way. I wasn't trying to focus on challenges necessarily, but it might be worth talking about. Does that make sense? If I can restate what Britton's saying, it's, do we talk about the challenges of traffic that have come with the growth, et cetera, and how this plan aims to deal with them?
I
Is that
don't
what
have
you're
a
saying?
super strong like,
Yeah.
but it's, you know, is it, hey, this is kind of the foreshadowing of what we're focused on.
The problems,
In the history though? Go ahead.
yeah, the problems we faced I'm just trying to clarify the question, so,
Yeah,
Yeah, no, that's what I'm asking. Is
Yeah, but
is
it-
is this an appropriate place to put in kind of,
if it's history, it
No,
it would
'cause you
seem
got-
that
yeah, you're keeping
you're
it
focusing
straight.
on what's happened in the past,
yeah,
Yeah.
that's fair.
to me.
Sounds good.
question
What-
is tone. Do we want an optimistic tone or do we want a pessimistic tone? I think
might-
that's somewhat
Or
of the discussion.
balanced,
Yeah,
at the very
I
least.
agree. I think it should pretty much be optimistic. You know, we might want to call out University Mall because that's part of what really helped develop our commercial
Mhm.
presence within the county.
Made us the retail hub.
Yeah, it really was. I know that at one point they talked about building it in Provo
Mhm.
and Provo rejected it.
Rod, did you have a comment?
No.
Oh, Jerry.
Jerry did.
Sorry, someone distraction.
I'd just like to suggest that since we mentioned that it's named after Walter C. Orem, we might say something about who he was.
As opposed to just his name. That's a good point.
Yeah.
It's a great idea.
Railroad.
He's a mystery man, Jerry. and I
Well,
like it that
quickly,
way.
why? Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good point because people will read it and say, and
No, but it's the greatest
Yeah.
story ever. We named it after somebody who didn't even give us the money we want.
didn't put the railroad
What
where
if
we
I
wanted
wanted
it,
it?
so.
We put the railroad in.
And now 100 plus years later, we're still stuck with his name.
Yeah. But, you know, uniquely, there is no other place named Orem.
It's true.
Unlike almost every other city,
There's always
there is a correlation somewhere else.
There's
Orem
another
has a
Provo.
very unique. Actually, I think there is
I know.
several.
Provost?
Yes.
Really? Hmm.
I do align with you on the technology as well. Sure, word perfect.
Yeah.
Some sort of mention to that, to just keep the tone towards, that's also what we're trying to bring back,
Yeah.
to bring more often to the city.
I think that just even in our preliminary discussions, I think that focusing on making Orem more of a tech center is definitely on our list.
That's great. Those are perfect for me. Thank you. And I'll do a version of the version. I'll wait to put this in the, no, I'm gonna keep saying Dropbox. I'm sorry. I'll wait to drop this into the drive until I've made some red lines and strikeouts related to this conversation today. So that's what you'll see first in there. Okay. And that'll be our test run. Okay. Anything else in those two segments? We'll make some of those changes and beef that up a little bit. Okay, the next thing that this segment aims to do after historic overview is call out the structure of the plan. And like most general plans, Orem's current plan and probably what we would envision is set up in elements, right? We talked about that a couple of weeks ago. Let me just read through this part and then we'll get to these other priorities, et cetera. But this little segment is what we would, well, I'll just read the opening paragraph of it and then we'll talk more about it. Structure of the plan. The Orem General Plan serves as the city's official guide for growth, development, conservation, and land use. The general plan helps to provide consistency to land use decision-making. While it avoids designating specific locations for developments, it establishes overarching policies and procedures that ensure informed decision-making over time. Required by the Utah Municipal Land Use Development and Management Act, LUDMA, the general plan is arranged in elements. That's the only nod to legal we give in the entire opening. Just so you know, Gary, that's all you get. The one little nod, okay? And there'll be no more.
We'll have much more.
After legal has reviewed the draft. in more
Can we
detail.
veto that? Both of them?
There you go. Is arranged in elements. The plan includes mandatory elements for land use, transportation, and moderate income housing, with room for additional elements tailored to the city's needs. The plan includes the following elements. I'm going to go through those as well, and then I want to talk to you a little bit about what this section, because this section will grow a little bit as we flesh out the plan more. Did you want to say something, Mike?
I did. I
Yeah, go for
actually,
it.
I would rather see the required by all that junk in an appendix in the back.
I don't think that we would do that. We have to have those elements as elements. So I'm
No,
not sure
the
we'd get-
required by Utah Municipal.
Just the
blah, blah, blah,
statement.
blah.
Oh, the statement. Sure.
Yeah,
That could be. I'm not sure that's required. it's
I don't
already
think it is
necessary.
required. That's why I said I'd toss it in the back as a historical note. I just, yeah,
Footnote.
I don't know
Well-
that it's
well-
overly additive. It is or it isn't in the document and why it's there.
Sure.
Sounds like,
Has no real bearing, I think. It's just what we
It
put in the
doesn't
document.
necessarily.
it
Yeah.
sounds like we're doing this because we're forced to, otherwise we wouldn't do it. You know, this is required by the.
Right.
I'm not-
Right. It is required by law that we have a general plan. I like to think we would have one anyway, right? It's a
Yeah.
good idea. We could take that statement out. I'm not sure it matters. Gary, there's not a legal requirement for us to have it, is there? Okay. If you all would rather not have it in there, it can go. Structure of the plan can be
Well, I
real
just
simple.
like the way it read until you hit that line,
Okay.
honestly. Just,
So we can strike from.
I'm just thinking about it if I was reading a book or reading a document, just,
So you're just basically saying the second half?
Start it required by the
paragraph.
Utah Municipal.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's arranged in elements. We can just say the plan is arranged in elements. The general plan is
To me,
arranged in
to some
elements.
degree, it kind of diminishes the value of it because you had to do it almost.
Let me
I
re-
don't know.
let me
Does
restate
that
it
make
this way.
sense? It just like, oh, we only did it because. Now,
I'm not doing it because I want to, I'm doing it because I have to.
Well, for the first 20 years, they were doing these plans, not necessarily in Orem, but everywhere else. That's why they did it, because they had to have it.
Yeah, well,
It
I
was true,
recognize there's
but we don't need
lots
to do it
to
anymore.
but, you know, it's almost like you're saying, yeah, we didn't really
Yeah.
want to do that. We threw it in there because.
No, it's a point, it's a well-taken point. So I'm going to start required by the Utah Municipal Land Use Act and strike that and pick
Yeah.
it back up again at the general plan, okay? Let me reread it. It's not going to read the way it's written. It's going to read the way we would be talking about it now. The general plan is arranged in elements, including elements for land use, transportation, housing, and others. And then we'll list them.
And I guess I don't see any of the last half of that paragraph being necessary. Because I think it's self-explanatory in the way it's broken down and the table of contents.
So we can strike all the way to,
The
Just
plan
includes the following
elements.
elements. I
okay.
think it's self-explanatory.
That's all right. You just took out as many words as you added in the other two sections. So we're running at a balance, and that balance, we're good.
Good. We're good.
Perfect. Thank you.
Still one page.
We're still at an economy of words. That's what I'm going for here. That works for me. So the plan includes the following elements. Introduction details the plan's purpose and provides a brief historical overview of Orem. Land use, strategies for balanced, orderly development. That's going to get a lot larger as we flesh things out, maybe, in terms of a statement. Redevelopment, plans and programs to address historic preservation, redevelopment of land, including housing sites, business sites, industrial sites, and public building sites. Economics, economic goals to strengthen the city's commercial base by attracting businesses, supporting local enterprises, creating employment opportunities, and fostering innovation and long-term prosperity. Transportation, plans for current and future transportation needs, including active transportation and public transit. Water use and conservation, assesses the impact of permitted development on water demand and infrastructure while identifying strategies to reduce water consumption. Housing, analysis of demographic trends and strategies to provide affordable housing options and promote owner occupancy. Parks and recreation, strategies and plans for parks, recreation, trails, and open space. Public services, overview of public infrastructure needs, community services, public safety, and impact fees. Urban design, strategies for shaping the city's urban landscape and infrastructure. And finally, appendix, expanded chapters of history, maps, documents, additional data, and referenced plans. Yes.
Number 6, can we change while identifying strategies to reduce water consumption to while identifying strategies to optimize water usage?
Sure.
Like that. And can I ask, just for the sake of time, so we can get on to land use, that maybe
Yeah.
we take this, especially with the key priorities and strategies, I'd like time to read those and
Sure. And
think
really
through
think about
those,
them.
and that this gets us kind of started on the introduction.
Sure.
And then, yeah, because I think we need to talk about some of the stuff at land use and what the different zones are and what
Sure.
it means.
I think that's great. Let's.
Yeah, because we
we
still
can-
need to leave, I need about, what, 10 minutes for your other item?
I don't need so much time for the other item
Okay,
because I'm not ready to give you anything real on it yet. Just
Okay.
to make you aware that
just a
we're
couple
doing it.
minutes, okay.
Just 2 minutes is all I'll need.
Okay.
So,
Unless
Okay.
anyone else has something about the introduction they would like to say this time. Okay.
okay. On the key priorities and strategies, do you want to back off on that for now then and just read through them?
Yeah, I
Okay.
I would personally would like time to look through them and
Sure.
like read them. I think reading them out loud is
Yeah.
not
Not
gonna
gonna
be the
help
best
you.
use of time right this second.
No problem. Let me just say one more thing before we move on from this to land use. The section that we were just in, outlining the elements. This would be the section, you remember we talked about saying there'd be a kind of an executive summary? It ought to be a better executive summary than it is right now. We won't really have more to say about those things until we've gone through those elements. And then, so it might be completely different. Like right now, we can change to say optimize use, water use, but that might completely change. That whole little paragraph might change as we get through that plan or that element. That's probably a bad example because it won't change a lot, but economics, maybe we want to say something totally different when we get done. It might be a little bit longer, bulleted even or something like that, but it should serve as an executive summary. And right now it's not much of one, but it'll be a little more detailed when we get finished. Okay.
Number 7, really quick.
Yeah.
It's not government's place to provide affordable housing,
Mm-hmm.
so maybe encourage.
Yeah, that's good.
Can I make a recommendation?
Yeah.
Alternate word, facilitate.
Yeah, let's.
Yeah, that's good. I can't read my own writing there. I've got to rewrite it slower. Sorry. Facilitate.
Yeah, I mean, or any other thing but provide.
Okay. Easy enough. All right, thanks. If you would all take a minute then when you're ready and read through those priorities and some of those strategies. Again, those might change as we get through those as we get through the segments, but those would be the overarching themes that we should be trying to kind of support as we write. Okay. Land use. Let's talk about the mapping first of all. So you have some paper maps. There was a good suggestion that would be maybe helpful. There's a large one and there's an 11x17 one. And I can pull up the land use map here on the computer as well so we can look at it in real time and talk about some of those questions you might have about the map itself. That land use segment, the land use segment that we're going to be working on now is probably the most widely used or the most widely understood of the general plan elements. When people think about the general plan, usually what they picture is that map and those land use categories. Currently, we have, let's go to that map. Whoops, going backwards here. Right now, in the mapping, we don't know what changes we need to make. There ought to be a review done of the map, and we'll count on you guys to do that as well. So the big one is for you to lay out on your kitchen table if you want and really take a look at it and see if some of those things are not lining up. But right now, that's where we are. Most of the commercial center of the city is running through State Street. We have those different zones that are supported by that area, by community commercial. The north end of the city, north and east, the tech center and the industrial to the west, and all of that. residential. One of the questions that came up when we were talking about this before was what exactly those categories for residential mean. Madeline, you mentioned you wanted to talk about some of the categories. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about those categories then. I'm going to pull back up my,
Well, and it was clear through some discussion with the city council that there was some, that these categories are vague to them as well. So making
Sure.
sure that we get real definitions that.
of what each one of those means. What's your thinking about it generally? As you think about low density residential, this helps us going forward because people have different ideas. We have rural and open space. Those are 5 acres and up, right? What is low, and that's low density residential. What else is low density residential? When does it cross into being medium density in your minds? Anybody have a thought about it?
I would say the fourplex jungles are medium density to high density,
As soon as you get to
depending on which
fourplex.
one you get into, right?
Sure. And that's pretty typical. Fourplex and up is usually kind of what people would think of as medium density. But is it fair to say?
Well, I
that-
would say up gets into high density.
Okay. So, so so the fourplexes would be higher density. Or high
Yeah,
density.
well, they would be in medium density depending on the ones we're talking about, you know.
Right.
If they've got adequate space for cars and all that stuff surrounding, they've got green space like,
Yeah.
which ones are, the ones over behind Macy's, the old ones back behind there. There's lots of open ground around them.
Mhm.
So there are more, you know, they're not so congested and tight, even though they're probably sitting on average, maybe an R10 lot
Sure.
or an R12. So, you know, you're putting a lot of people on one lot, but you're making sure there's adequate space in the area for them.
Okay.
But then you get into some where there ain't no place to park. There's, you know, if you're lucky, there's one per apartment.
Yeah.
Those are pushing high density because they're just not meeting the needs of the people who live there in the first place.
Seems to me that in the past, there were, I mean, years ago, there were just the designations, low density, medium and high.
Right.
I don't know what the square footage of those lots were. There must be some historical information that
Yeah.
correlates the two, but I thought an 8,500 square foot lot was low density in the past, but
Well, let me get to we can get to that segment of the plan, and I had it up here, but I have closed it on accident, so I'm gonna pull it back up.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's take a step back because the first one is actual rural density
Yeah.
residential, which is the ROS and the rural open space and the OS5 zone. And the basic question that I think we need to ask about any of these zones, starting with this one, is this a zone we desire in Orem? How much of it do we actually have, and where do we want those zones to be? Because if rural open space is important to us to maintain in our limited amount of land that is left, then we have to plan and we have to maintain those areas so that they aren't becoming even
obsolete.
low, medium, or high.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think that's a lot of what has been happening is everyone just comes in and says, we can just change the zoning. That's been the history here. That's what everyone has come thinking, that we'll just make whatever it is, whatever we want it to be. And I think that that's part of what we need to start shifting and saying, like, no, we value agricultural, rural, open space. That is what we want to maintain. We think that's a vital part of Family City USA. So I go back to the same. How do we feel about rural density? How much of it do we even have? I think it's the corners.
Yeah, it's up
Pretty
in the
much.
corners.
It's the corners.
And that's a really important distinction, because from a developer's standpoint, and so if you want to talk about rural and agricultural lands, it would be good to say that in the definition of it, or to talk about that when we're talking about what zones that land use category supports, or what that land use category means. If what we want to do is preserve those areas, or if you value the larger lot, et cetera, you want to say it explicitly. And that's a conversation you have to have as a city, because a developer sees those as holding zones. He sees ag land as just land that's waiting to be rezoned to something else.
It's an opportunity. Yeah.
So if it's not that, you want to state that so that you can call back to your general plan when they come in and say, you're gonna face an uphill battle trying to change this zoning because this land use category says, no, we want the rural lots here. Is that what you're saying? I think,
That is what I'm saying.
I think
I
that's
think,
perfect.
Those are the issues we've been facing
exactly.
since we've been on the commission. They go by, agricultural land and come ask for rezone and they throw hell for 6 months and we have to compromise or we spend too much money, you guys are running us out of money, which is not our problem.
Sure.
So yeah, we do need to put some guardrails on what is and what cannot be done before they show up.
Okay, that's a great statement. And that'll take a little bit of discussion. I mean, the concept is clear and we can definitely do that. And that's how I agree, that's how we ought to approach the designations, the land use designations. They ought to be very clearly stated as to what they intend to do and then have a kind of a subset of different zones that are supported by it. And I do think with agriculture and stuff, if your goal is to keep that, you want to state it explicitly. So you can come back to it when you need to, Chair.
I'd like to see us get a big map of the zoning also,
And
so
lay it
we
with
can
that.
compare and see what
Yeah.
it really means.
And where they're,
And how close are we keeping to what we've designated?
yeah, and where they're different, what areas you kind of, in consultant speak, that's areas of transition. So you look at that general plan map and go, oh, they've slated all of this as low density residential or medium density residential, but the zoning is all, rural, what's the open space 5, OS 5. That says to a developer, oh, that's transition. They want me to come in and say, what am I gonna do? So we want to see where they're not matching and say, is that really what we intend or not?
So I have an agricultural zone.
Yeah, or bring in an actual agricultural zone instead of calling it open space. Call it agriculture if that's preservation land or something. But that's a decision again that requires more conversation with you and the council and everybody to say, do we really mean that about this land, or is it really kind of in transition or not? For example, that the low density residential southwest, low density residential southwest was created specifically to say, oh, it's low density residential, but if something came in that was appealing, we'd go for it. Basically, I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but that's kind of what that says.
Yeah.
And that's what came. So you want to say what you mean in that general plan. It does kind of signal that those zones that you'd be willing to consider as a city. Not that you have to, you're never bound, but it's sort of you're trying to create, like we say in that opening statement, consistency over time in the decisions that you make. It's not really data-driven decisions necessarily, except that if we're looking at things like Jerry's saying, if we look at where the general plans map is not consistent with the zoning, that's the first step. And then we say, is that really what we want? Is that transition that we're looking at? If so, then we keep it that way. And if not, maybe we go the other direction, but it's time to look at that now too. That's a hard thing to do, but the GIS experts at the other table and the one that's on the conference right now will be able to help me with that. I would go blind in 2 minutes trying to do that alone, but we'll get through it. Yeah. Anything else about that? I think that's a great exercise for us to start out with, is looking at those transition areas or the mismatches.
Yeah. Well, and just really drilling down in each. I mean,
Yeah.
Our rural density is very limited,
Mhm.
and that is a problem if that's something we value. But I think that's where I think as a planning commission, I think that's where we've kind of struggled anyways. What do we value exactly? What are we
Sure.
optimizing for? So,
And that's exactly what the general plan is intended to do. So if we can get this adopted and it matches your goals, then if I'm hearing you right too, Madam Chair, if I'm hearing you right too, then you want to make that more a part of your decision making, looking back at the general plan and what that says, and we'll try to ramp that up in our reporting as well.
Hazel?
Yeah, I want to express just a little bit of frustration because this is my last term,
Oh, okay.
ends in May
In May?
this year. There should have been an onboarding doc. This is insane. 5 years into it, we've been literally given no direction, no training, no onboarding,
Mhm.
nothing. We had to figure out for ourselves and pretty much get our information from those who don't always have the best alignment of the city,
Sure.
even if they work here.
So some kind of an onboarding process would
There's
have
no onboarding process. Like this map would have been an absolute heaven
really
to
helpful.
receive on day one.
Yes.
Study this, study the zoning, this book that was just handed to me last week.
Right.
I mean, it was truly like going through, starting my own business and just going through hard knocks and making some bad decisions and pissing off a lot of people in the way of process of learning. That should be a standard issue.
Yeah, definitely.
Any new planning commissioner should receive a full packet and assign somebody from the city, just to explain what things are.
Sure.
That's,
Yeah.
That's,
We agree.
makes
it's a total
total
disaster.
sense.
Well, we've now got this, so
No,
we're
like,
making.
a few-
Step
A few
forward.
months ago, thanks for, yeah.
Yeah,
Everybody but
Uh,
you
I-
coming,
I-
every new person coming
I
in.
see
I
we're
we
getting
get it,
good
but that's-
strides though. I mean,
I
Oh,
think,
huge
I think we should
strides.
change the code and
Yeah.
serve more terms since we never got training.
No, but it's a good point, and it's a complicated job to be a citizen planner, planning commissioner. So we'll try to make sure we provide that kind of support. It's a good point. Appreciate it. Let's see. From there, we want to be, so then if I can extrapolate from where you were, Madeline,
Mhm.
the OS5, or sorry, the rural category, the open space category, we need to look at that. We want to look at the low density, the medium density, high density, and we will propose to you what those might mean. And then we can start looking at where they exist on the mapping.
And let's shift it back the other way, as we have like 5 or so minutes.
Yeah,
What do we want to propose to you?
yes,
Because I think it needs to be coming from us as much, if not more, than from you. What do
Absolutely.
we, after all we've seen in the last, some of us have been on for months, some of us have been on for years. What do we want to see these categories more in general look like?
sure. And maybe that's are there categories that you don't think need to be there? As you look at that legend, are there categories we don't really need? Or ones that we don't have that we ought to have? I'm not prepared to say that right now, but that's why I say we would draft something and you would say, no, that's not what we're looking
I loved
for."
your idea of the corner commercial
Yeah,
idea, especially downstate where state is so wonky to the grid in the city.
yeah,
You know, it creates those odd triangle corners that are sometimes really hard to get in and out of. Having unique thought about what goes into those spots.
yeah,
Almost even, you know, some of them are cute triangles, some of them are larger.
yeah.
Those cute ones are so much harder to deal with. So maybe you have a special zone for those really tight ones.
Yeah.
Saying, you know, it causes a lot of problems in traffic. So we're only going to let you build this kind of stuff on these little plots because of what they are.
And that's that's really insightful, actually, because that's the kind of thing that would get called out. The general plan would call out and say, one of your goals needs to be, as we look at the land use segment, for example, or maybe even
Yeah.
and repeat it in economic development. You need to deal with these corners. It's hard enough to get a driveway on a house on a lot that looks like some of these lots, much less
Yeah.
get people in and out of a gas station. So it's a good point. What kind of zoning needs to be there? What kind of special restrictions? You need to write that up as a zone. It should be a goal of the city to, within a year of the adoption of this plan, have a code that deals with that better.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing you'd want to call out. I like that.
And I think we need to better tie our categories and our designations to the type, if we're gonna call it community commercial, and we have lots throughout along State Street and along some other corridors that are called community commercial, well, what does that really mean? I
Yeah.
mean, I know it's focused on the citizens of Orem, but what types of businesses, what types of things do we want to? Why is it not its own see something? As
Yeah.
opposed, you know.
So better tie the
'Cause clearly-
categories.
Yeah, clearly the regional places that we are anchoring, we are gonna want different types of businesses in there than we are in what we're focusing towards us. Are we trying to get some different types of grocery stores in? Do we need more than the 3 we have or whatever? Maybe not make everywhere places you can put car washes. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe.
And that, yeah, the same kind of thinking is what Mike was talking about. We would call that out and say, this is a category we want to create. I'm going to throw out something like community neighborhood service commercial, lighter duty, not allowing car washes, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, no
And
gas
say,
stations, no
we don't
whatever.
have that zone. We need one. And we're gonna land use plan these corners or the back side or this side that goes right up to residential for that. So that people come down. We're not looking for giant regional draws here. You don't need a giant theater here. You need little neighborhood service commercial that people come down to and serve out of this 1,000 households, you know? We don't have that zone. We need it. This tells us to write it. So that's that better tie the categories that we have to the kinds of zoning that we are looking for in certain areas.
And I think like, especially with commercial, this is just my opinion, but I think we need more commercial zones
More kinds.
that are more specific to areas that make sense to what's around them. Cause I
That's-
mean, we literally pretty much only use two, and over time they've become virtually identical. I've said this a lot, so I'm not gonna harp on it, but like we really need to drill down and think of some different types of categories and some of the things we want. And-
That's great.
And it might be that we do economic and then we circle back and we say, okay, if these are what we're trying to attract, what areas of the city does it make sense to zone for those types of,
Yeah, that's a great thought. I like that a lot. More types of more specialty commercial that's more tailored, right?
Yeah. And I guess the other question I have on residential, we can,
Yeah.
not separate from low, medium and high, but really of our designations, which ones are we really using and which ones do we really want going forward? I mean, if really all we're using is R12 and R8, then
Then why have the other categories?
Well,
Well,
I have a-
medium is largely 7.5s on this. Yeah.
Mhm.
Everywhere there's a 7.5, you called it medium density,
And
which is
that-
fine. I mean, that can be a designation. It's
it's historically accurate to what's there.
it creates that, I don't know, right word, not congested, but
That is another thing that we could do or look at. Go ahead.
No, I would also want to follow up on what Jerry asked for the zoning map, same size,
Same size, yeah.
same size.
Yeah, we
Please.
can do that.
Yep.
Easy.
I
Matt
think this is
did
the
that
first
this
time I've been
afternoon.
able to read it.
It's great. We'll do more of the large print ones. Matt can do that. He did that one this afternoon. No sweat. We can do that.
Thank you for doing that for us,
Maybe
Ed.
one without any designations too.
Just the aerial.
Yeah.
Sure. Yep, you
That'd
bet.
be a fun set of maps.
And then you can draw all over them, and I like that too.
Well, yeah, it gives you have all the references, what we have now, what isn't there or what it could be, and then
Yeah,
what
it'd be
we've talked
convenient if we
about.
could get like a gloss one printed, so we can write on it with like a Sharpie or something.
You could an erase, like white erase.
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of. Maybe we could magnetize it for you, Britton. We'll see what we can do.
Hey, you know what? Thanks for offering.
Okay.
And I think just going down real quick, the last one's industrial. And I think that's a further, I mean, all these need to be broken down into real specific real specific.
Yeah, what do we mean by industrial
do
and
we-
light industrial? Because Geneva's not there, which would have been heavy industrial.
Well, and
but-
does having this much industrial make sense going forward? Is industrial something we want in our city? I mean, like, I'm just saying these as
Yeah.
existential questions that we
Yeah.
need to address.
Yeah, that's a great, and it's a conversation that a lot of cities in Orem's kind of stage of life have. How much industrial is still appropriate? It used to be everything west of the freeway, all over, everywhere was industrial zoning, and that's not always the case anymore. But how much of it do you want to let go, or how much do you want to keep? It does serve a purpose. It's employment. It's bringing people in.
Or are there better designations than light industrial and heavy industrial?
Yeah, there might be.
Because right now, HVAC and plumbing and all that stuff ends up sitting in the industrial areas anyway, but not really industrial.
Yeah.
So
Or
we'll
the
take,
flex spaces for warehouses, sorry.
so we'll take our first look at those categories then, with that kind of in mind of creating maybe additional categories that make more sense and are more tailored to areas of the city, or could be more tailored to areas of the city. Is that fair to say for
Like
everybody?
to find a place for my
Okay.
zoo in here somewhere.
Yes, I want your Zoom. So, and then if we can, we just have a couple of minutes
Sure.
before our real meeting. So, you wanted to, so thank you for the general plan. We'll keep working on things.
Absolutely.
And then we wanted to have a brief discussion on changes to the home occupation business licensing regulations.
I did want to tell you, yes, that we're, so you're all aware, we are trying to streamline. One of the goals that you'll see actually as you go through those priorities is to streamline the process of of attaining a business license in Orem. Sometimes there are some hiccups. The IT department is building an online system for people to use. And in doing that, it's coming up with a series of questions that people answer as they're going through the application process on their computers to get them to the right kind of business license, because we have several. And in going through those questions and talking about how people would go through that, it came up that there are a lot of little changes that need to be made to the home occupation ordinance. They're not super significant. We won't go crazy with totally revamping it, but it refers to the finance director issuing licenses. That doesn't happen anymore. We need to make some changes like that. We're going to be bringing that to you. It's not earth shattering, but we want to make sure you understand why we're doing it. It's to help in the streamlined process that we want to have done by June. So to help out business licensing and make things easier, that's where we're headed.
Okay.
We have one person processing business licenses for the whole city of Orem. So she's a little stressed out generally. This will help.
Awesome. Thank you.
We want her to stay with us and not lose her mind. So create an online system.
Sounds good. Okay, then we will adjourn for about 5 minutes and start our regular meeting at 5:30.
Thank you.
Okay, then we'll go ahead and call this meeting of the Orem City Planning Commission to order at 5:34 PM on March 19th, 2025 in the Orem City Council Chambers. So we will begin this evening with an invocation by Bridgen.
Our most gracious Father in heaven, we came before thee in prayer this evening to thank you for the opportunity that we have to meet as citizens here in Orem, to discuss the intricacies and the sensitive topics that we care about so deeply here within our communities. We ask for a spirit of peace and collaboration and cooperation as we come to discuss our feelings and our opinions. Will thou please bless us with thy spirit in abundance and do so. And we ask these things in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ, amen.
Thank you. We will begin with item 3, which is our consent agenda, and the only item is item 3.1, which is meeting minutes for March 5th, 2025 meeting. I assume nobody wants to remove anything from the consent agenda. Good. Can we get a motion? Or if there's any issues, speak up, but,
Yeah, I'll motion to approve the minutes from March 5th.
okay.
I'll second it.
Okay. Britton moved and Rod seconded that we approve our consent agenda items. Hey, vote.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the consent agenda items are approved. Then we will begin with item 4.1, which is a public hearing regarding the Whitestone Estates. It's an ordinance amending Article 22-5-3A and the zoning map of the city of Orem by rezoning the property located generally at 710 West, 2000 South from the open spaces OS 5 zone to the single family residential R8 zone. And it covers approximately just about 14 acres. So we'll begin with
Thank you.
staff.
Thank you, thank you. What all of that required legal sounding stuff means is basically the end. This is a request to change the zoning of this 14.01 acres from OS 5 to R8 zoning. So the existing zoning you can see there in green is the OS 5 zone. And they have requested, sorry, it keeps moving forward before I'm ready to. They've requested to change the zoning of that entire acreage to R8 to allow for a subdivision development of single-family lots. This is, Whitestone has been before you before. It's as a different zone change request. This is a unique one. It started over as just R8 zoning only. So I'll show you that they did provide a concept plan for that acreage if it were to be rezoned to R8. This is sort of an illustrative or yield plan. They figured they could get about 53 lots. All of those lots would exceed the 8,000 square foot minimum. The largest ones in corners on this concept plan are like 18,500 square feet. The average lot size in this case would be just over 9,000 square feet. These would be public roads in their plan. They would all be dedicated. There are some stubs. There are some changes that would have to be made to this plan. We don't dead end like that. We'd have to create some kind of a cul-de-sac, et cetera. So things in this kind of a plan could change a bit. We don't know how much detention is needed, for example. There's not been a lot of that kind of civil work done yet. This is just a concept plan for this kind of subdivision. Some points to consider when you're looking at a potential change from the OS 5 open space zone to that R8 residential. The OS 5 does allow single-family residential development. It requires 5-acre minimum lots. Multifamily is not permitted in that zone. It does allow things like churches and schools. It allows agriculture and recreation and agritainment, which is what's happening at the farm currently. This is the farm property. You're familiar. The proposed zone R8 will also allow single-family detached development at 8,000 square foot minimum lots. Multifamily, again, is not a permitted use in that R8 zone. And again, it does allow quasi-public uses like churches and schools in different situations. So there's not a whole lot of difference between those lots. Those zones, the major difference would be agriculture allowances and entertainment allowances in the OS 5, and then that much larger lot size requirement. That is the proposal in a nutshell that they've made to change this property to R8 zoning. As a reminder, for the Planning Commission, this is a zone change application, so you are a recommending body in this case. You would eventually forward a recommendation of either approval or denial to the City Council regarding this change of zoning. Or you can continue the request to ask for more information that you feel like you need, or more public comment as you might feel like you need. Any questions for staff?
I understand that the plan is just their proposal, but they are required to include the trail through that area that has been previously discussed. Is
Yeah, that would be, that,
still-
that would be required because it's part of our transportation planning. So they would have to do that, but it's just a component, yes.
Any questions for staff? Okay, is the applicant here? Would you like to come forward and present, ask, answer questions?
Yeah, we don't.
Yeah, I think Jared did a very good job at explaining what we're proposing here. We feel like we've done our best to meet a lot of the concerns that have come up. And yeah, I mean, Jared pretty much touched on everything that I would have mentioned. So this is our proposal for the zone change.
Are there any questions from the commission, the applicant at this time? Rod?
I have a question. When you came before the commission a few months ago, you proposed part of the development as R8, the other part as R6, if I recall correctly, but it was for some townhome type development. What happened to those other units in this proposal?
We just replaced all of the townhomes with single family homes. So now there won't be any more townhomes here.
Was the driving reason for that?
Just the community feedback.
Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay. Okay. Then we're going to move to the public hearing portion. Because of the number of people here tonight, we're going to limit comments to 2 minutes, and we will, I don't think there's anything, I think just 2 minutes. And then we really do want to hear from as many of you as we can. And when you come forward, if you could please state your name and just state the name. And yeah, so we'll open up the time for the public hearing. Please come to the microphone here at the front.
You are welcome to line up if you want.
Or come sit on the front row.
Sorry.
yeah.
I'm Linda Brown. We live on 2000 South, right next to the farm in this proposed development. And I think the biggest problem to this development is that it's right by the railroad tracks. None of you would want to live by the railroad tracks. The Union Pacific has never had a quiet zone. They blow their horns all night and all day. Front Runner now is back to the quiet zone, so they don't blow their horns, but it's a train. It makes a lot of noise. It's very loud, rattles the houses, and those houses by the railroad tracks would be awful, which I think they would end up rentals, and they would end up changing residents very often because people would not want to live there. I think it's inhumane to expect families to buy those homes and live by the railroad tracks. And there are 2 crossings very close. In fact, one on 2000 South and one about a couple of blocks away. So that's a lot of train noise. Another issue is traffic. 2000 South is a very busy road. There are times when cars will back up clear to our house waiting to get on Geneva Road because the traffic light there, of course, is a good thing, but still there's so much traffic on Geneva Road. And it becomes a racetrack if there's not a lot of traffic there. So it is not good. And cars would park on the street. They will park on the street, and that's very dangerous. And I think another thing is we need open space. There's no problem with having some open space. And this farm is great. And I think pulling the rug out from under the Wilkersons is very wrong. So I hope you will deny this request. Thank you.
Thank you. Rebecca?
So I also, somebody, yes, gave a few, I have a few sets of documents.
Okay.
That, I think they're from individuals who do plan on speaking later. Would you like me to distribute them now or when they come up?
Now's fine. You can hold
Hey.
just for 1/2 minute while we,
Oh,
because we
no
want to hear
problem.
you. We want to listen to you.
I'll wait.
So.
Yes, I don't have this one. Not that one.
Thank you for your patience.
Okay. My name is Linda Olson, and I am reading this in for Carolyn Hargraves as I hand it out. Dear Orem Planning Commission, I'm writing on behalf of the Utah Department of Agriculture and Food to share our perspective on the proposed rezoning of a parcel that is currently in use by Wilkerson Farm. While we understand the complexities involved in land use decisions, we encourage the council to carefully consider the broader implications of potentially rezoning this parcel. Agritourism operations such as Wilkerson Farms play a vital role in communities. They provide significant economic benefits by attracting visitors and residents alike, preserving valuable open space, contribute to agricultural production, and increase local supply chain resiliency and food scarcity, maintain agricultural production in and around our urban centers is critical for ensuring food security, and that access to fresh, nutrient-dense foods remains available to residents. The importance of preserving open space and productive agricultural lands cannot be overstated. In the past 60 years, Utah has lost nearly 20% of our farmland. We often say that once agricultural lands are lost, they are lost forever. Losing farmland, such as this parcel, is a critical threat to local food security. Thank you for your thoughtful consideration of this matter. UDAF is available as a resource should you wish to discuss strategies for supporting agritourism or opportunities to support agriculture in the context of land use planning through the conservation easements or other means. Sincerely, Caroline Hargraves.
Thank you.
My name is James Brown. I live just a few blocks away from this development. I just want to address the safety issues here. We just had a crash up in Salt Lake last night between a car and a front runner, a tracks train. I just can't imagine. I mean, the developer said they're selling these for $600,000 to $800,000. First off, I can't imagine paying $800,000 for a house that's literally 50 feet from a rail line. That's insane. But assuming that they do build this, it's going to be filled with students. So we're going to have a whole bunch of little kids around there. I can't imagine what's going to happen when some little child comes out because, ooh, look, a train. They want to go play with it. They go out there and a front runner train hits that kid at 70 miles an hour, just like tracks hit a car last night up in Salt Lake. That's going to be devastating. And I would hope that the Planning Commission and the City Council would recognize the danger inherent in putting houses literally 50 feet from a rail line. Those cars are 85 feet long. As soon as one of them comes off the rail line, it's going through a house. No fence is going to stop that. No house is going to stop that. It's just going to rip them off the foundation. So this is a terribly dangerous problem from the rail line. And then immediately on the other side of that rail line is an industrial storage yard. Who knows what they're storing in that facility? This just does not seem like the place that we ought to be building houses. Seems like we ought to have a buffer, like, oh, I don't know, a farm in between that sort of development and houses that are on the other side of it. So I would encourage you to deny this project entirely just because we need that buffer space between the houses that are already there and the dangers that we're imposing upon them. So I would encourage you to deny this completely. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Helena Kleinlein, and I also live near the farm. I would ask that you also reject this proposal, but I would like to draw your attention to House Bill 371, which is a bill regarding land conservation in Utah. Since 1970, Utah has lost almost 3 million acres of farmland, primarily to development. In 2022, the Utah legislature recognized that the productive farmland is critical to the production of food, food security, and wildlife habitat. This bill grants money to purchase agricultural conservation easements. It also identifies agricultural land that is eligible for preservation, and the parcel of land where Wilkerson Farm is qualifies for this preservation. The bill encourages counties to create a general plan on how to preserve agricultural land. It also requires that the county treasurer deposit 20% of the rollback taxes into an account specifically for preserving agricultural land. I am asking that this land not be rezoned for housing of any type in order specifically to conserve farmland in Orem. The Utah Department of Agriculture and Food, Conserve Utah Valley, and Utah County themselves would like this land to remain zoned agriculture into perpetuity. We would like to encourage the landowner to respect the current agricultural zoning and either place it under conservation easement itself where it can be farmed forever, providing viable food security for our area, or he could sell it to some other party at the same agricultural zoning which he bought this land for in 2015, and someone else can choose to preserve it. While we recognize the landowner has the right to sell the land, legally he only has the right to sell the land at the current zoning, which is agricultural. There is nothing in the law that gives him the right to have this land rezoned for housing simply so he can make a 400% profit. Please do your part to recognize balance is needed in our county. As we continue to grow, we need to provide a local food source. Please do not be a part of the problem, be a part of the solution.
Thank you.
My name is John Cheney. I also live near the farm. In interest of time, I'm going to give you a couple bullet points here. This is the Utah County Agricultural Toolbox, which state and county officials, including the Utah County Planning Commission, recognize that the agricultural land is developing at a rate that there will be very little agricultural land left for fruit or vegetables to grow in this county. They want to keep agricultural economically and socially viable and to implement measures that support agricultural land and water. They recognize that for every dollar spent on Utah agricultural product adds approximately $5 to our Utah economy. Envision Utah did a survey called Utah Your Future, where 97% of respondents recognize that Utah needs to substantially increase and protect its production of agricultural products. And Utah County residents have expressed a desire to be more self-reliant and less dependent on other states and countries to provide their food. This farm provides 250,000 pounds of food per year. And as far as agri-tainment is concerned, 50,000 people attend the yearly fall festival. I've been doing that for the past 10 years. I'm also very happy to be part of the community-supported agriculture that they have been doing with growing food. When we were doing that during the pandemic, it was far more fresh and better food that was coming from the farm than it was coming from the stores. So this is an important resource. We hope that you will protect it and ask you to deny this request.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Young. I'm an Orem citizen. I'm an educator and an entrepreneur. And I have specifically brought my children and my grandchildren to the Wilkerson's farms to enjoy that lovely space many times. I understand the dynamics of that, but I agree with so many of the other speakers today here that we need to, as leaders of Orem City, need to consider how important it is that we have stewardship over certain spaces in Orem to be remaining green spaces. I just wanted to read something. In 2024, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints made headlines with its 289 million purchase of over 41,000 acres of farmland across 6 states. This acquisition, made through its real estate arm, Farmland Reserve Incorporated, highlights the church's ongoing commitment to self-reliance and responsible stewardship of resources. The church buys the land and then allows tenant farmers to work the land. Why are they buying so much farmland? It all comes down to provident living. So I just would like to add my 2 cents worth as our commission here, to consider the responsibilities that come. And I understand the dynamics. Again, I know that there's a lot of money to be made if we change the zoning, but I think that we need to consider the community first. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm Romay Allen. I'm from Orem. I'd like to reiterate what everybody else has said. First of all, I do want to thank you all for serving. You have a very hard job trying to help decide how Orem grows. When I found out about Wilkerson Farm possibly going away, one of my little nephews, who's 7, demanded that he come with me to the meetings because he is so concerned that this property be taken and turned into housing. I've got 2 of my nephews here with me tonight. The reason is because we have very little space where families can go and enjoy in Orem. You have parks, but you don't have any place where we can have a fall carnival. When you take that away, it takes it away not just for now, but for all generations. I don't want to have to go and pay $25 to go to Thanksgiving Point. I would like to support Orem. I'd like to have a petting zoo there. I'd like to have it expand and have more community support and more gardening there. I would really, really plead with the owner. I think that the tribute that it would pay to Orem and to all of the residents if they were to donate the land or sell the land to be preserved forever would be such a wonderful way to serve our community, and it would last for generations. If it turns into housing, nobody's going to remember them. They're just going to be resentful that it's more million-dollar homes that end up turning into rentals. So please vote no.
Thank you.
My name is John Bennion. I'm on the board of Conserve Utah Valley. Our goal at Conserve Utah Valley is to preserve land and water in this valley forever, but we are not opposed to development. We urge people to consider evidence carefully and determine whether Orem will benefit more if this particular property remains fields or if it becomes another neighborhood. Utah is an agricultural state, but we produce only a fraction of the vegetables we consume. We need local, organic vegetables, especially when lines of commerce are disrupted as they were during COVID. Wilkerson Farm produces an average of 60,000 pounds of vegetables, potatoes, carrots, beets, and carrots per year, and the farm produced 125,000 pounds in a recent good year. My figures may be low if others are right. Extension agents have evaluated the soil and identified it as sandy loam, which is uncommon in Utah and excellent for growing vegetables and other crops. Is it wise to continue to put houses on prime farmland? These 2 agents note that the Wilkersons operate one of the few farms in northern Utah County that remain in agricultural production. In the past, the Wilkersons have paid their lease by donating food to Tabitha's Way. They have also sold vegetables through farmers markets and community-supported agriculture. A few years ago, the Wilkerson added agricultural tourism and to increase their income. Every year, 50,000 people visit the fruit and vegetable stand, the outdoor tractor and equipment museum, and the fair. The number of people who pay for the admission shows that residents of Orem and other towns value their visit to the farm as a recreational and educational experience. Utah also needs affordable housing, but is this the best place, and how affordable will it be? Others have talked about it being a buffer zone between the train and freeway, train line and freeway, and that's Conserve Utah Valley would lean toward keeping it that way.
Thank you.
My name is John Porter. I live in the neighborhood west of this Wilkerson farm. I oppose, like many, this project on two main reasons. Number one, the loss of open space, the loss of Orem's agricultural heritage to be filled with houses. And my second point is, I think we have plenty of houses. I've handed each of you, or passed out, a list of densities of the cities in the county of Utah. Orem has a density of 5,000 people per square mile. Look at our neighbor Provo, 2,700 people per square mile. We are packed with people. We don't need additional people. We don't need to lose our agricultural open space for more homes. Another point is the concern I have for safety. If this project is built and the one on the other side of the road, which the same developer is developing in Provo, the added traffic is going to be an immense danger. There's going to be traffic, there's going to be accidents. So in the event this is approved, and I hope it's not, there should be a recommendation from this commission that the traffic issues have to be addressed. There should be a traffic signal. There should be crosswalks. There should be other factors taken to protect against the ultimate accident that's going to happen. If the motion's denied, which I hope it will be, the recommendation is to deny, I would suggest, because the city council can of course make its own decision, that in the commission's recommendation of denial, that conditions be suggested. In the event they're going to overrule this commission, we need to provide for these safety factors, traffic signals, intersection or crosswalks. Put that in your record so that when it gets to the city council, they have to deal with it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Heather Fry. I live in North Orem. I've lived in Orem for 18 years. Thanks to each of you for giving your time and energy to serve Orem. I can only imagine the impact this process has on each of you and your families. Your commitment and sacrifice are appreciated. I also recognize the rights of the current owner of the land where Wilkerson Farms is located. As Ms. Kleinlein said, an owner can do what they want with their land. But to strive for machinations to increase the value of land in order to add merely profit to an individual seems misguided and seems to be inconsistent with the goals of Orem as Family City USA. I would like to address the rhetoric that Orem has need for more housing than farming. As is often the case, a theory exists in a vacuum, and its application has real-world impact that is felt for generations. In theory, the current demand for housing trumps all other issues. In application, and I quote Joni Mitchell, "When you pave paradise to put up a parking lot, you will not know what you've lost until it's gone, and then it will be too late." Orem will never be able to replace what this farm provides. In Provident Living, Chapter 11, Spencer W. Kimball gave pertinent advice to us individually and to cities. We encourage you to grow all the food that you feasibly can. Berry bushes, fruit trees, vegetables. Plant them if your climate is right for their growth. Grow and eat them locally. In October 1980, Ezra Taft Benson stated, "There is more security in food than in all the political schemes of the world." The vote tonight isn't just to move a farm somewhere. It is to destroy a sustainable organic farm that annually provides 250,000 pounds of food security. Many are hoping, pleading, and praying that the rhetoric will not replace reality. Please preserve what little land in Orem we have left.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Brooke Peterson, and I live in Orem near the Wilkerson Farm. I want to bring up 3 important reasons why I believe we should keep the particular parcel of land zoned for agriculture. It fulfills 3 needs for the community: farming, open lands, and recreation. Farming brings food security to local areas. A farm could be considered a food insurance policy. Most people don't know, like she said, until they need it, until it's too late. There is a saying, who controls the food controls the people. And often food emergencies happen when we least expect and when we are not prepared. This particular land has soil like gold. Agricultural specialists from Utah State University say it is one of the few soils in the entire state that can plant any crop we want. Not only does it have nutrient-rich sandy loam soil, it has bottomland canals that circle the bench to access water, which is a critical component of farming. Open lands, specifically this land, brings the benefit of many birds and other animals. The farm is a complete ecosystem for nature. The people who live near the farm say they feel the peace and tranquility because of the farm. Open lands bring psychological well-being. There are many studies that suggest proximity to green space brings mental health benefits, reduces depression and anxiety, and can improve brain cognition. And the third reason is recreation. People need recreation. 50,000 people come to the fall fair at the farm every year. People like Donnie Osmond, Dr. Mike Kennedy, and John Curtis. Do you know more people come to Wilkerson Farms than they do Nelson Grove Park? Up at Utah State Capitol, they recognize the importance of agricultural recreation, and they have created laws around supporting agricultural. Please do not destroy the many benefits from this farm simply so a developer can build more houses. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Leanne Swanson. I've lived down in the area on Sand Hill Road for 30 years now. I'm opposed to this being developed as residential. I couldn't believe anybody would even want to live next to those train tracks because I live next to them. My house butts up to that freeway and those tracks. Also, the traffic is horrendous down there. To add more traffic to this area is not a good idea. I can tell you that right now. It took me 10 minutes to get out of my driveway to get here tonight. Also, the safety, with the tracks being right there and the safety issues of all the cars backing up like Mrs. Brown indicated. I've noticed how much more traffic is down in that area now. And we need to keep this as an open space area and keep that farm down there for our families and for the future of our children and their children. And that's where I'm at with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's good to see so many familiar faces on the Planning Commission. This makes me feel good about how tonight's going to go. But I was just going to say, it would be great if we had a city. Sorry, Truman Van Cott. Thank you. But it would be great if we had a city to our west that was an example of what it's like when we ignore our general plans. If a city could just cram housing in and show us how horrible it is to put a bunch of high density housing by a train track and have it turn into a rental community of a minimum of 4 people per home that are unrelated to each other. And that's exactly what we had in Vineyard. I consider myself a refugee of Vineyard, and I would hope that we would follow our general plan and not approve this application tonight. So thank you.
My name's Pamela Moose. My husband and I live in Peyton's Crossing, and this is just more information more than one way or the other. We often walk. That's one of our favorite pastimes. And in order to get any walking done down there, we have to cross 2000 to go into the neighborhood just south of us. And it is scary to cross 2000 even as adults, especially if we're out a little bit too late, later than we plan, and it gets dark, and it's terrifying. There's no safe place to cross 2000 anywhere between the railroad tracks and beyond until you cross the street and get onto the west side of the light. You take your life in your own hands. Now, my husband and I are adults. However, there's a lot of children that live in this area. And this is what I want to share, is that those children take their bikes and they go out onto 2000 and go up and down with those speeding cars. These are things I've seen with my own eyes, and it is scary. As you continue, and I know that road is Provo, so I get that as well. But anything that you can do to help create a protected crosswalk, even if it's like Provo where it's not a stop sign, but only for when people really need to cross the street, there's a safe way to cross. So we can, especially if those neighborhoods end up going in, all those children wanting to go back and forth, there's got to be some sort of measure of safety. Anyway, those are my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sherry Fong. I hadn't planned to speak, so I hope I can make sense. I agree that there is way too much traffic on 2000 and it is very unsafe. These same developers are already developing the Provo side of Wilkerson Farm. And so it's not just 53 new units, it's the other side as well, adding to 2000 South. When the gas station got approval to go in, unfortunately, they got away with using a 3-year-old traffic study with their own employee answered questions that anything over 18 months is too old, out of date. And the one that they used had been done during COVID. Nobody was out. But that gas station is adding a lot of traffic on 2000. And now the housing. There are times we can't get out of our street. If the train is going, it backs up to Geneva. If the light is red at Geneva, it backs up to the train. There's way too much traffic. It's not safe. And in words of several city council members who spoke the last time this was being discussed, and the project just before Wilkerson Farm was denied because it was not conducive to the neighborhood, was going to cause too much congestion and traffic. They got denied, but others were postponed. We'll look at it later. And they also said we've got to start listening to and taking care of Southwest Orem. We have not given them the same considerations that we have the rest of Orem. And that's the way we're feeling over here, is that we're the dumping ground for what you don't want somewhere else. So please consider that when you make your decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Connie Porter, and I live in Payton's Crossing, and it's very hard to get across 2000 South many times during the day. And there are children in our neighborhood, and it would create an extremely dangerous condition to have more cars going down the road when we can't even accommodate the ones that are already on it. Also, I just can't imagine not having more green spaces in Orem where people can relax, enjoy their families, and make memories together. So I would ask you as sincerely as I can to reject this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's freezing in here. Is there a way we can get this AC turned down? I think it's been on for like 40 minutes straight. Is that possible, by chance?
Gary's gonna work on it, so. No, like, we really are all freezing up here. We apologize if we're all like. Okay. The public hearing is still open, so if anyone else would like to come forward at this time. Okay, if no one else would like to come forward, then we will close the public hearing at this point and we will bring it back to us. Is there any questions we want to follow up with the developer on at this point? Okay.
Yeah.
Haysom?
Can the applicant come up to the mic, please?
Yeah.
Thank you. How long have you owned this land?
Oh, we haven't bought it yet.
Okay. Well, I guess no further question. The rest
Okay.
of it was coming.
Yeah,
Let
no
me
worries.
ask, let me ask a question while you're there.
Yeah.
There, you guys are very good builders. You have an excellent reputation. The question I have, it was stated that you've acquired the land on the Provo side of the street. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We've already purchased that ground on the south side of 2000 South.
Okay, that's 10 acres, I believe.
Do you know what it is? Yeah, 10 acres.
Then you're planning on proceeding and building homes on 8,000 square foot lots there. Is that correct?
Yeah, so that development has already been approved. So, we could start within the coming months. And so it's 30 single family lots on 10 acres. So,
Now, apparently a request was made to, I'm not sure that it was by you or someone that represented you, to have smaller sized lots on the Provo side. And the infrastructure there was such in Provo that they denied that request. Is that correct?
yeah, that's correct.
Okay. So the farm, as it's presently constituted, I believe is somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 acres, I believe.
I think it's 14.01.
No, adding the 10 acres that you've acquired, that has been farmed last year. Do you follow what I'm saying? In other words, the farm as it was operated last year consisted of the 14 acres that we're considering here for rezoning, in addition to the 10 acres on the Provo side. So there are really a couple of issues in my mind. One is people love Wilkerson Farms. I've not been there and taken advantage of their services, but I hear that, and just this evening, many people just are endeared to that operation. And I'm a farm boy, so I have I don't know why someone would choose to farm. It's a hard life. But in fact, to me, success was getting off the farm, because it's a tough life. And so it won't be the same moving forward regardless, because 10 acres of the 24 acres are gone and you're planning on building homes there. So I just wanted to confirm that is my understanding is correct.
Yeah, yep, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Before you go.
Yep.
So a lot of our friends here have raised concerns about the railroad and safety crossings. What would be your response? What have you considered in terms of your planning to try to maximize safety, given the concerns that have been raised?
Yeah, to be quite honest, we haven't got all the way to the planning part around the railroad tracks. So UTA has reached out to us to set up a coordination meeting. So, we did it with the Provo side. We already met with them and talked about the sidewalks and the different things that they're going to want on the Provo side. So we'll have that meeting with them and see what safety recommendations they have for the Orem side. So
Can you tell us what things are under consideration? You've met with the Provo side, so what possibilities have they suggested?
Tyler was in the meeting with the Provo side.
Yeah, I'm doing more of the Provo stuff, so I can answer that a little better. Basically on that one, where that was already approved, like back in 2008, we just went over those plans. And the biggest concern that they had was actually like, where do we stop the sidewalk? They're like, we don't want the sidewalk to go obviously clear to that crossing because there's nothing on the other side of it. So that was most of the discussion. And then just to speak a little bit more to like the safety on this Orem project, as you know, we've changed the plan a couple times with feedback. We originally were proposing to build a tall masonry wall all along the back of that. I don't know if that's kind of, there's been a lot of safety concerns that were brought up, and if, as far as children go, I think a wall would mitigate that. As far as cars driving into it, I don't, we don't have any solutions for that.
I don't know if you can completely solve that problem, but having lived alongside railroad tracks more years than I care to admit, the concerns are serious. That it's not just a, check a box kind of thing. There's some real safety issues. From my chair, I think those would absolutely have to be spelled out on what kind of steps would be taken in order to ensure the safety of kids and any other people. I mean, there's other issues as well, but specifically relating to the railroad tracks, speeding freight trains or trains are kind of unforgiving.
Yeah, and we're definitely open to, whatever suggestions and kind of laws are in place for mitigating those risks.
Well, I'm sure these issues of concern have been on your mind for some time as you've contemplated just how you'd make a success of this initiative. So the questions that I have to do with trains. And I believe the front runner starts at like 5 in the morning, and I believe runs every half hour until about 9:30, and then every hour, and then picks up again about 3, and every half hour until about 7. Is that consistent with your understanding?
Yeah, I'm not sure of the
Okay.
exact
So
schedule,
you
but it
don't-
does
you
start
don't-
early and does end fairly late.
4 times an hour. Both ways. Each train runs both ways, twice an hour.
But not in the middle of the day, I don't
Yes,
believe.
they do.
They do it all day long. So what about the Union Pacific train that goes along there, and you can't get their schedule? They won't tell you what it is. And I'm told that by someone that crosses the tracks, that sometimes as he's on 2000 South waiting to cross, he'll have to wait 5 minutes. He said 5 to 10 minutes, and I'm not sure that that's an accurate number. More than that, some of you were saying. And I guess the train runs maybe once or twice a day, sometimes in the night. I don't know the frequency with which it runs. But it would seem to me that if that train's running and the arms are down, you're headed east on 200 South, and if you've turned off Geneva Road, you've got a bottleneck that you can't get out of. I mean, how do you reverse course? I don't know how you could turn around and move along. I don't get that. So that's a concern I have is the traffic element. It seems to me that it, and then the 2008 approval to build the R8 there, that's 2008 is quite some time ago. Provo approved that then. And now here we are many years later with a significant increase in apartments and homes all along that Geneva Road corridor. And it to me, I'm not sure if you took it to the Provo Planning Commission that they would approve it today. They might, I don't know. But you can understand the concerns, I'm guessing.
Yeah, definitely.
And I hear you fellows are just really fine fellows. I know the fellow that owns the property. And he's a fine fellow, very generous and very bright, capable fellow. But it just, I don't know that this fits in there. It just seems the proximity to those railroad tracks, the traffic concerns. Now the farm stuff, I mean, it's a small operation. I can't even say that they're making a go of it. I mean, that's another issue.
Yeah, one thing I would, I'll speak a little bit to that. The owner asked me to kind of, he prefers to not share a lot of details with the public.
And I've known him. I haven't seen him for years, but I know him. I know he's an exceptionally fine fellow.
He's a great guy. So the owner of the property is not Wilkerson Farms. They've been leasing the property, and that lease is terminated, and it is not going to continue regardless of
Yep.
the outcome of the rezone. And so just want to be sensitive to the history. And I know the owner worked with Wilkerson for years and supported them, and they had a great relationship, and that he made the decision that that doesn't make sense for him anymore. He's been supporting them for quite some time, and he wants to sell the property. We've brought several plans, to neighborhood meetings now and worked with the community. This is what the general plan for Orem suggests be done in this area. It's low density residential. What we're proposing is low density residential. So, really, we feel like we're just trying to be reasonable and listening to concerns. And so I think it's just.
And I believe that. No, I think you're well intended. The question is this an appropriate use of that property?
Yeah.
That's,
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, there's so much to say, quite honestly. That would have been my question if the Wilkinson Farm operators are here or not. But there's nothing guaranteed. Now we know the Wilkinson Farm will not continue being there and the lease is terminated.
Yeah,
So-
that is a fact. And I hear all like the sentiment here. And, one suggestion I had is, if there is this like kind of great desire to help the Wilkerson, family and farm operation, maybe there's other parcels of land that are still open space that the owners of that land would like to, I don't know. There's a lot of desire to help the community. And so that would be one way, would be to help. I know they're actively looking for a place to move to. So that's just one suggestion.
And I know that the owner of the property's been very generous in working with them.
Yeah.
For some time.
Yeah. And again, he just won't publicly go out and say
Right.
that. So it's just, but that is. a
We're
fact,
aware.
yeah.
We're not open for public comment right now. I'm sorry. We're talking with the developer at this time. Thank you. Okay, any other questions for the developer?
No, thank you for my.
Thank you.
I can ask the planning commission, do we want to reopen the public hearing for any more comments, or are we?
I'm good with
You're good
Yep,
with it?
same.
Okay. Then we will reopen the public hearing if anyone would like to come forward and we'll still stick to the 2-minute rule, and please state your name again because we need to keep track of it.
Sherry Fong. I've heard several people express interest in buying the land at the price OS5. So that's a possibility if you want to keep it open space. I know 2 of my neighbors who are very interested. And one of the gentlemen that's coming up now said he's been trying to get a hold of Mr. Switzler to talk to him about it. So
Thank you.
Again, my name is James Brown. Yes, I've been actively attempting to find enough people to fund purchasing this property, but I've basically been turned away at every opportunity. Al's refused to have a discussion about it. The property owner has refused to have a discussion about it. The current people that are trying to buy the property have refused to have a discussion about purchasing it at the open house kind of meeting, neighborhood meeting that they had. I said, look, I understand that you have money invested in this, right? You've got time, you've got energy, you've got money invested in this. Tell us how much you need in order to buy this property from you so that we can go form a coalition and gather that money and pay you for the property as well as your time. And they've flatly refused to give us any sort of indication of what that number might be. So there are efforts to try and preserve this farm in this area, but we're being thwarted at every turn. I believe personally that if the city council declines this, and I realize the planning commission is a part of that process, but I believe if the city council denies this, that Al will be a little more willing to come to the table and have a discussion about someone else purchasing the property and keeping the farm there. So. Thank you. Any questions for me about any of that?
Do you know when Al purchased the land?
He purchased it in 2015,
And what zone was it at the time?
OS5. Yeah, it was OS5 when he bought it. My understanding, I've talked to Richard Wilkerson Sr. as well as Jr. about this. My understanding was essentially this same process went on with the previous owner before Al bought it. And Al's the one who came in and did what we're trying to do and said, oh, hey, let me buy that property and I'll preserve the farm, because the previous owner wanted to sell it, develop it. The same cycle is repeating itself again 10 years later. So that's my understanding. Any other questions for me?
Do you want to ask? a
Well,
question?
that's not consistent with my understanding exactly. So I think,
Okay.
but I could be wrong. Okay, but I understand that that Wilkerson started to farm this in 2010.
Correct.
Then about 2015, the fellow that owned the ground,
Correct.
necessity, sold it. And then Al came in and bought it.
Right.
And then he's supported this effort for
Correct.
many years. And I think could say has underwritten it to some extent.
Yes,
And everyone's been the beneficiary of his generosity.
absolutely.
And I don't know why he nor will anyone else visit with you regarding the possibility of buying
Right.
it. How much are you willing to pay for it, I guess is the question.
Well, that's our question, is how much
Yeah.
do they want for it? So we know if that's even a rational thing to do, right? I had the discussion at the town meeting. I said, is it $100 million? Is it $50 million? Is it $10 million? Is it $1 million? How much is it? So we can even make a rational conversation about, oh, okay, that's reasonable to do, or no, that's ridiculous. We're not paying $100 million.
I'll bet you these builders, if they could get you to offer 10 million for it right now, they'd catch a deal.
I don't know. They haven't been willing to say that, honestly. I
Well,
asked the question
ask
and
them
they
right there.
literally refused.
Say, if I give you $10
How much would you take
million,
for it, guys?
would you sell it to us?
Let's see if we can actually get them to answer. How much would you take for it, guys?
I
I've
don't
been
think
asking
this
this
is the
question.
venue
That's not the
now.
right
No,
venue for
please.
that.
Sir,
We can tell you it
No,
afterwards.
I think if they smile, that means yes.
We'll see. All right. Any other questions for me? I'm going to go sit down otherwise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Helena Kleinlein, and I would like to address something that the developer said, that the Wilkersons are looking for land. They are not looking for land for agriculture because there is none. There's plenty of land for housing. If you're aware of the master plan, 2000 South is being extended to Lakeview Parkway. Once that road is completed, there will be a lot of completely unusable land that will be perfect for housing, but it is not perfect for farming. It is the soil that we are trying to protect, whether Wilkerson's farm or somebody else. The land is valuable for farming, and we should not be putting houses on it. And so Wilkerson's can't go anywhere else because they don't have that kind of sandy loam soil that will grow any fruit or vegetable that we want. That is rare.
Okay, would anyone else like to come forward? Okay, then we'll close the public hearing again.
We got one more.
Oh, did somebody say, sorry. Yeah, come on. I'll reopen so you can.
John Cheney. Just a quick note. So I know, of course, there's an economic issue here too, but in terms of the agri-tainment, one thing that is notable is that this is now the only area within the Provo Orem area that is having a fall fair. Everything else has been spread out to the further places. So as far as having some economic benefit for the agri-tainment, we don't have any more in Provo. Those farms have closed. It's just this one in the Orem Provo area. So it is a central place that can bring people. So just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the planning commission for discussion. Oh, Gary, yes.
since you reopened the public
Oh.
hearing, you should give the applicant an
Oh, another
opportunity to
opportunity.
respond to anything.
Thank
that-
you. I appreciate that. Would the applicant like to say anything further?
No, I mean, everybody has an opinion and yeah, what we shared earlier is my understanding of kind of the facts, so. Yep, thank you.
Just to confirm, you know for a fact that the Wilkerson Farms contract is terminated.
Yeah.
So there's no way they can farm on it again or do anything they want with it. No agri-tainment, no fair, none of that.
Well, I don't know that it's impossible for them to do it again, but this owner's that lease is done.
Okay.
You know, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, at this time, there's currently no lease on the land.
Just clarifying.
Absolutely. So, okay, then I will turn it over to us for discussion or for motion.
I'm going to go back to what I said last week about a similar project that, a city thrives on diverse usage. And we're getting very, very slimlined into just one or two things. And we need a diversity of economy. We need a diversity of use. And we're down to the bare bones. We don't have very much agricultural land in this city left. I mean, almost none. I think any municipality that doesn't preserve some is insane. It's just insane. I mean, there are two things humans need to survive. It's food and water. And we're getting rid of our ability to make food. The fact that it's right on top of industrial and tracks, we go to great lengths to make sure that people don't build on top of houses. We don't do commercial. We keep buffer zones from industrial, and yet we want to just let them build on top of industrial because that's what's on the other side of the tracks is industrial. We're the third or fifth most dense, depending on which chart you read. We definitely don't need more houses. I mean, it'd be nice if we had more land, but that is not our highest priority. I mean, to me, it's not. And I think, the state's usually the one devastating everything in their wake. And we've got their departments pushing against getting rid of agricultural as well. I really think that we should take that to heart. So.
Jim, did you?
Well, a couple of thoughts I have. Many have been distressed regarding Wilkerson Farms going away. And now they realize that that's a reality of life. Would their sentiments change regarding this proposed development? I see some are saying they wouldn't change as they're nodding their heads. And the farm produce thing, I can relate to that. I mean, I grew up, as I said, on a farm, and we grew much of the same stuff they grow on this farm. And one of the issues that agriculture faces is overproduction. There's too much milk. It's driven dairy farmers out of business. We can produce a lot of food in this country, and we do. And sometimes if there's too much, then it drives farmers out of business. Grain. They had a soil bank a program established back in the 50s where the government bought land or they paid farmers to not grow stuff. They bought dairy herds to drive farmers that had dairy cows out of business to get the price up where it needed to be. So that's not a distress I have, and there's a lot of places where food can be grown. My issues with this property have to do with the proximity to the railroad tracks and the traffic along that 2000 South corridor. That's the concern that makes me balk at going along with this project. And I again, know the owner's a fabulous guy, and I know he speaks very highly of these fellows, and their reputation is stellar from all accounts that I've encountered.
Jason?
Discussion or comments?
Comments?
Both. Okay.
Well, it's the same, yeah.
Yeah. No. So it's obvious that the developers are sophisticated enough to not buy the land without knowing if they're going to use it or not. So that's a really good plus on their end. Also, the landowner purchased it at a certain zoning, knowing that that's what he's buying, and that's also another factor in there. As far as the train tracks, and I know for Rod, that's a concern if everybody's concerned, but there's tons of homes by train tracks right now, and we don't have the data. Currently, it's supported. We have been riding a roller coaster of rezoning in the last few years in the city, and thanks to whoever gave us the data here, being the third highest populated and first highest density per square mile. I align with Mike on this one as well. It's I'm actually inclined to not consider any rezoning until we finish our plan. There's absolutely no reason to. We're overcrowded per square mile. And this is just nuts.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
I would add to Hasten's comment that, Sand Hill's a house on fire already. And this just adds to the.
What is it?
Sand Hill Road. That's where they dump in. Everybody goes to Walmart through it.
How would you know that?
I work off Sand Hill.
Okay.
It's
Are you
insane.
adding to the traffic on Sand Hill Road yourself?
I do on a daily basis.
Maybe you should change employment to lessen the traffic on that.
No, I'm not gonna do that, but, I think my employer is a good addition for what was a replacement. And he's a good steward of the area, but if it was a new building, I would think that it's really just not warranted for the space because of what's gone into Sand Hills. It's chaotic, and with all this new development that's going to come in, everybody's going to take 2,000 to go to Walmart.
And I'm still scarred from that gas station.
Yeah.
All the lies that were presented by the first developer to say that is
every log just burns the fire hotter.
Yeah.
And how many houses are going to have to be taken out down Sand Hill to widen it because we wanted to let somebody else do another project.
Now, we literally heard Mr. Axley, saw him crying on the Zoom call in the middle of COVID and how his kids were supposed to work in that gas station.
Yeah.
And the second he got the approval, turned around and sold it to Holiday Oil. And so I'm scarred by the whole street. No, and I know that these developers are amazing. They're different. They have a good track record and a good reputation. But and kudos to you guys for not spending all that money before getting the zoning. Honestly, smart. But currently, there's so much we can do. In addition to the city's actual need of land for parks and recreation properties, and we're looking for land. I don't know why is that not considered by the council. We need 7 more spots. Why is buying this land is not considered even on a bond? I don't understand it. What is the city doing about that?
There is a park just across the freeway, a nice park, a big park. I think someone referenced that Wilkerson Farms is used more. Nelson's Grove is frequented.
I've been to Nelson's Grove, but the other side still.
They still deserve a park.
Yep.
We can't walk to that park though.
Yeah, that's right.
Could I ask the audience, please don't make comments. We're making a record. It's being recorded, and when people talk over each other, it makes it really difficult for the record to be made appropriately. Thank you.
Rod, did you want to say?
Yeah, so for the record, I have,
Rod's not.
oh, yeah. For the record, I have lots of problems with this. Railroad is not the only one. Traffic is another concern. From an economic perspective, I very much believe in the law of supply and demand, and that we should not interfere as much as possible with markets. Our nation has been fruitful by allowing markets, free markets, to do their thing. And I think when we try to hinder that too much, well, we can cause problems, some unintentionally. So the issue I have is I recognize the landowner owner's rights here. I acknowledge my colleague's comments that he purchased it with one zone. Frankly, though, I think if he were to challenge us in court, I don't think we could win it. The other side of the road is being developed. I've heard numerous references to money that might be available somewhere. I tend to be skeptical of those kind of those situations. So I'm not quick to reject this. You know, we say we have enough housing already, you know, it's not what I see. I see that we have a lot of housing and communities in our city that are run down and running down rapidly. I've mentioned it before in previous meetings that you know, the neighborhood I grew up in, I'm embarrassed of. So, you know, and I've lived in some big cities, you all know that. I've lived in Tokyo, which is the most dense city in the world. I just think we need to, I agree with the comments about considering our whole plan, but I also wonder, are we trying to close the barn door after all the animals have escaped? Already, this farm is half of what it used to be, roughly, between a third and a half. So the arguments about how much it produces, to me, those are kind of mute.
Yeah, they don't mean anything.
And plus the lease has been terminated, and that's the owner's right. If he wants to open negotiations, great. If he doesn't, that's up to him. He owns the land. So, like I said, I have a lot of problems with this. But at the same time, I'm not quick to say, well, we got to preserve it because it's agricultural. Well, yeah, it is. But you could make that argument about a lot of other places here. You could also argue that it's, as an agricultural land, it's gone.
Let me say one thing, that, so the Provo side was not rezoned, okay? That was zoned R8 back in 2008. I don't know what it was before that time. So nothing was done in regards to rezoning the Provo side of that property. And the question's been posed of me that we deny the ability to proceed and build homes. What will happen? What are you going to do with the land? Well, it behooves the owner. I mean, as Haysom said, he bought it knowing that it was OS 5. And so that's the understanding he had when he bought it. So it still remains as farm property.
Right.
So there are fellows, I know a fellow that farms many vegetable gardens throughout the community of Orem and sells his produce at stands and to grocers and does very, very well. Now, the question was asked about what will Wilkersons do, and it was mentioned that they're not out looking for places to farm, and you know, I don't know that that's completely true. I've had occasion to talk to them about it, and I've given them some references of places they can call to see about establishing some sort of an operation. What will become of it, I have no idea. Anyway, those are just my thoughts.
Yeah, no, and I don't disagree with that. I'm talking about if the owner decided to take it to court and challenge it, I'm not sure we're on solid ground.
Well, ask Gary.
No, and I was
No,
gonna
no,
say.
no, that
yeah.
comment is
I think it's
is not-
valid.
It's valid
Yes.
comment, but Gary, if an owner purchased a property understanding the zone is OS 5, when he bought it and is applying for rezoning, gets denied, can he challenge the city and change zoning anyway?
Yes, he can challenge. The question is, what's the likelihood of success in that challenge? Very remote, to be honest.
Yeah, we're aware of that.
I wasn't, so thank you for the clarification.
No, but no.
Yes, in doing that, I don't know of a single appellate case in the state of Utah where a property owner bought land under zoning A, held it for many years, and then requested the law to be changed to zoning B, was denied and sued and won. Changing the law, which is what this application is a discretionary act ultimately by the council. And the council will determine whether it's in the best interest, health, safety, welfare of the residents of Orem. And that they have very wide discretion in which to make that determination.
Thank you. It's also noteworthy that when the question was brought to the landowner about what if the zone does not get accepted, what you will do, and the answer was, I'll just wait for the election when the table turns. and get it done later. So be very aware of who you vote for. That's a, but it's a tough one. And I'm not saying we should or should not, or we don't want to determine the destiny of the landowner's property. But I think we as a city have not had clarity, and this is where the roller coaster is coming through. And I just think we wait until we have clarity. We don't have clarity. That's why we keep receiving all those rezones. When we just finished that one with the War Perfect property, and now we have what, 16 acres or 15 acres getting zoned to R8 as well. That made more sense. But otherwise, this one is just too confusing. And if anything, we should continue it until we figure out what we want to do.
Yeah, I would say also that the market demand turned Detroit into a wasteland because there was no diversity. And so that's what you get by letting rich people just do whatever at the moment without any forethought for the future.
Also, economically, you can't promote affordability if you keep rezoning to increase the price, the price per square foot.
It's very true.
It's just that you keep approving it, makes all the lands around it worth more because they can apply for more rezoning, and everything goes more expensive. It's the other way around.
Yeah.
That's why I asked about what happened to the R6,
That was a great question. Yeah.
because I'm very much concerned about affordable housing for people who are just starting out in life. This doesn't answer that concern. R6 would have, I wouldn't have owned a home if it weren't the fact I could get in a townhome.
I agree with you. I see your point too, but when I was looking for a starter home and I worked in Midville, I ended up living in Eagle Mountain City Center. To do affordable housing in a city that has hardly any land left, no matter how small it is, it's going to be expensive, driven by the factor of appraisals in the homes around. It's the idea of if you want an affordable home, you're just going to have to fork a drive.
Yeah, no, I'm tracking that. I lived in the Washington DC greater area. I know that very well.
So it's
much better than Salt Lake area.
Which is now cheaper, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay, Rod, was there anything else you wanted to say?
No, I
Okay.
raised my points. I
No,
just
that's
don't,
fine.
I could support a continuation. I think to Hasem's point, we don't know a lot of, to just summarily reject it or recommend a rejection. And I think it could stand some illumination.
Okay, Jerry, did you want to say something?
Yes.
Yeah.
I just want to ask a question pertaining to safety. And I guess I'm sure it's out of order, but I would like to have you answer with a raise of hand. How many of you have ever seen a train derailment? That makes about 4 of us. I was within 100 yards of a train derailment, and I can tell you, nothing in very close vicinity survives. Not block walls, not houses. Granted, these derailments are rare, but it's a sight when they happen. And nothing survives.
Do you want to say, Brendan?
Yeah, I think as the planning commission, it's our responsibility to advise the city council on zoning and planning within the city and presenting that general plan. At one point, the city of Orem deemed it prudent to make this area agricultural. I just think that that's still relevant now. So I'd like to motion that we do not recommend the zone change at this time.
So you'd like to motion for a negative recommendation?
Correct.
Second.
Do you have a second?
I have a question about the current zoning now.
Okay, can I get through the motion and then
Sure.
we can, so Britton moved and Mike seconded that we forward a negative recommendation on, do I have to read it? A negative recommendation to the city council for the rezone of this property. Okay. What is your question?
Well, currently it says 5 acres minimum.
Yeah.
It's almost 5 acres. Somebody comes in and wants to build 3 homes, that will be approved if they get variance, or 2 homes. Isn't that correct?
Yes, they absolutely could build 2 homes on that land today. They have that right. So, okay, Britton, you made a motion. Do you want to say anything?
No,
Any
I think
further?
it's pretty cut and dry.
Okay, Mike, you seconded? Would you like to say anything?
I think
You
I've
made a
said
motion
lot.
to deny?
Yeah.
Or to
Make a
continue?
negative recommendation.
Negative recommendation, or
Yeah.
just to continue?
It's a denial.
Deny.
To deny, not to continue, to deny.
It's not a denial, it's a negative
Negative.
recommendation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that's our role is to advise them. So we are just making a negative.
So
Yeah,
recommendation.
I
to
I mean, the
deny
motion is a
approval.
negative, yeah.
Yeah, I think the residents have been very clear. I think their arguments are valid and fair. You know, even in looking at this beforehand, I attended one of the neighborhood meetings, and it's just doesn't make sense to me. I think it's just too close to the train tracks. I think residential or agricultural in the city of Orem in this day and age, I think is very valuable. And it's mental gymnastics for me to try and justify this.
Vote
No, everyone can have an opportunity to speak one more time. I've not had an opportunity to speak if anyone hasn't noticed.
You were always speaking.
Speak.
Anyway,
Love
Jim,
that.
anything further you
I,
want to say?
I just regurgitating, so no, I have no more to say.
Okay. Jerry, anything else you'd like to add on the negative recommendation, or?
We're making it negative.
We're making a negative recommendation. The motion is for a negative recommendation. Rod?
So we're not voting yet, but I have issues with the negative recommendation. I prefer continual.
Same.
You'd prefer to continue?
Can I ask for what?
Clarity. Clarity in so many fronts.
That was one of the, oh, sorry.
And go ahead.
No, that was one of the questions I was going to ask too, before Britton made his motion, is just what further clarity do you think that we could get in this circumstance that would help in making this decision?
I wanted to get with some of the councilmen, see what the options of the cities are, the city itself are. What does the city have to present as an option? Could the city be a solution or not?
Yeah, you could extend that, all these county organizations or state organizations, you say they have money.
And I do agree with you, Rod, that talking about maybe raising money, raising fund by knowing how much you are, the economics of this are uncertain for the owner, but not for the city.
No, I'm tracking.
Yeah.
There's county money, I know that, for this type of thing, because I've spoken to some of the residents, so there are funds available for preserving these kinds of spaces,
But that's why I want to recommend the continuous. not for-
Exactly. We ought to be able to hear
But-
about these things.
So what difference does that make? I don't quite understand what you're saying. You want to see, what would the council do, the city council?
No, not what the council do with the land. What would the council do to own the property as a city? For
Well,
the city.
let's say they do nothing. I mean, is that really relevant? I mean, really, the consideration is, should this be changed to the R8? And if it's denied, then it remains OS5. But who buys it is quite irrelevant to this decision in my mind.
I would agree.
And
Go ahead. Go
sorry.
ahead.
And aren't some of those decisions up to the property owner? I mean, whether or not he wants to turn this into an agricultural easement or wants to look for funds, or, because some of that is under his control. We can make an offer. We can say, I mean, like, I'm just saying we as in the city could work together and make an offer, or an independent organization could make an offer. But if he's not willing, that's kind of beyond what we're being asked to do.
Yeah.
Unless if the property owner is receiving more money for the land if it gets rezoned, then he would. If he's not, that would make total sense. And if that's the case, then I base my opinion on a negative recommendation as well. If he's receiving extra money for the rezone, it's just, he bought it as an OS5. He knew what he's getting
that's
into.
just, as you said, that's right.
That's it. But if he's, I don't think it's our position to know the answer either. It's not our position to know the answer. So Yeah, it's, I needed more time. But if that's not in alignment with everybody, you guys can vote your way and I vote mine.
Okay.
No, absolutely. That's why we have 7 of us.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
okay. Did I ask Rod if you had anything else?
No, that was it. I
Okay.
mean,
Okay.
I tend to think like my dear colleague here.
Yeah.
I think I've made my comments and people may not agree with them, but
Mm-hmm.
that's my thoughts.
Madeline, I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, sorry. I will get to me. I was just making sure everyone else. I go back to some of the same things we've talked about, especially the last time that this issue was before us. I think this is a values question. What do we value in Orem? What do we want? How do we want to use our land? I'm with Hasten. I think we're in the middle of starting to look at a lot of these aspects and how it really applies. And what do we want Family City USA to look like and to be? And I struggle with the fact that I think we have a land issue more than we have a housing issue in Orem, in the sense that we have to make use of every little bit we have left. And there are properties, there are little tiny 1 or 2 acre farms that probably do make sense to turn into housing developments in the middle of neighborhoods. And then there are other places where I think we have to stop and step back and say, is this the best use of the land? I mean, I think, yes, the situation with Wilkerson is beyond our control and whatever the property owner wants to do. But we have no requirement to rezone this. They are coming to us as the developer and as the property owner to change this so they can do what they want. But I think we have a duty to look at it, not just at what this project is and how it impacts just around it, but on a greater scale. That's the purpose of us as a planning commission, is to say, does this make sense? That's fine if Provo wants to develop their side of it. That's their land. Apparently they made that choice like almost 20 years ago. But we don't, but is that what we value? Is that what we want? And I think we have to look along there. And I still come back to the fact that we lose this farmland, it is literally gone forever. And that to me is a concern, especially when I don't feel like we have a well-developed idea of how we want to develop Southwest Orem. So I feel like it's almost the wrong time to make the decision, kind of like Hasten was saying before, that I think that there's more things we need to be doing to make a decision. But I don't believe we need to continue it. I'm going to be clear about that, I think we have enough information to decide if we want to make a positive or negative recommendation on this at this time. So
To your point, maybe the general plan is, finishing the general plan is a good time to have the discussion after.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I like Hasten's idea of, putting a halt on a lot of zoning things until that's sorted and figured out. Because remember this 2018 general plan is from a previous administration, is it not? So I think that's an important consideration. Thank you, Hasten. As well, I don't think that it's our place as the planning commission to try and facilitate a solution for this. I think it's been obvious that there are individuals in this room that could act as agents to that end. And maybe prudent for those individuals to get together and do some sort of coordination of some kind. But I think it's, as a government body, I think we advise the city council on zoning and planning, and that's their recommendation.
Would anyone else like to make any other comments before we go to vote? Okay, you technically spoke, but you get the last because you were first. So do you want to say anything beyond that?
No, I don't want it to be as a harsh denial to the idea of continuation. I think that's valid and fair and valiant even. But I think that's more, it'd be more appropriate for citizens and residents to take upon themselves.
And since we already have this motion before us, we need to vote on it. So, okay.
So, and a positive would be
yes, to vote
supporting
and support it. So if you vote
negative
yes,
recommendation,
you are supporting the negative recommendation.
Great.
No would be you don't support the negative recommendation to City Council.
Great.
Okay, Britton.
Aye.
Jim.
Aye.
Mike.
Aye.
Jerry.
Aye.
Rod.
Nay.
Hasten.
Abstain.
And I vote aye. Had to double check that. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 for, 1 abstained and 1 against, and therefore a negative recommendation will be forwarded to the city council. I am going to suggest that we have a short recess before we we finish our meeting, because we still have some items on it. So let's just do like a,
Jog around the building to bring our
yeah,
temperatures up.
just a couple minutes and. Oh. Well, do I have to make a motion on that? To have a brief recess?
All in favor, say aye.
No. Acclamation. We're gonna have a recess for a couple minutes.
Up into my. Okay. Missing my.
Well, very good job of handling that. So Roger Dudley, the guy that lays all this stuff out, he's quite negative on us.
Who is?
Oh, my God.
Okay, we're going to return from our recess and finish our meeting. So we're going to move on to item 4.2, which is a public hearing continued for March 5th, 2025, regarding ordinance amending Articles 22-14-20I and 22-1-5G, modifying requirements for the conduct of neighborhood meetings in advance of applications to the Planning Commission.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to continue with my my pattern of explaining that basically means those two sections, those two articles, that's sections in the zoning code, govern how the Planning Commission requires, or how the code requires, that applicants for different things to the Planning Commission conduct a neighborhood meeting in the area around where their project is. We've been through this a couple of times, and I apologize, but it seems the more I get into it, the more questions I have instead of more answers.
Oh.
So I have a couple more things that I need to ask you before I can finalize, and just to make sure we're all on the same page, and then we should be able to be finalized. Just real quickly, again, it used to say, or it has said currently, that you do these on weeknights after 6 or on Saturdays after 9 in the morning to try to, and not on holidays or the day after a holiday, to try to get more people there. We were all still on the same page about saying they should not happen on the same night as a council meeting or a planning commission meeting, and that the proposal should describe the notice, and that another neighborhood meeting can be required if there are changes or to the concept or the proposal that was presented. We talked last week about, or last time we met, about the neighborhood meeting minutes, providing a template for them. We're moving forward with that. Again, a couple of things we talked about in that meeting, requiring a meeting roster. We're going to have an example of one of those for folks. One thing that we talked about as a group, and I wanted to run this by you and make sure this makes sense as well. I think it's a good idea to have the roster and to have a line for them to say a comment. If they're not comfortable making a comment, then they could make a quick comment there. I agree with this. I don't like this. I do like this. I do think we should stop short of having it be a check yes or no box. That smacks of you abrogating your responsibility. You should be getting their comment. And if their comment is, I hate it, you kind of get the sense that that's a no. So you don't really need that box check. But that's really, I think, where we should stop with that. The roster should be real simple. Does that make sense for everybody? The other idea that came up was comment cards. We could provide a real simple comment card, like index cards or something like that, for people to use. I kind of feel like the roster is good enough with a line for a comment myself. And then they can make it clear. If you're not comfortable talking in a meeting, and a lot of people aren't, just write a little note here. Write a little quick something.
I think your
Mike.
checkbox.
Yeah.
I don't like that either,
Yeah.
because it almost
Seems
makes
like a
them
vote.
feel like they're voting too.
Yeah.
We all checked no.
Yeah. And
So
it
you
shouldn't
should
feel-
just go away, it's for feedback,
It's
not
it's
for
not a
control
vote.
and
Right.
dictation. So.
Exactly. You guys vote after a lot of conversation and taking in all of their comments. That's what it's for. But I think a roster is a great idea. We need it anyway. Why not have a line for it? I think that's fantastic. Moving on from
Could I-
that. Go ahead.
Is
Brendan.
there too much to ask? I went to the neighborhood meeting with,
Uh-huh.
on the Wilkerson Farm thing. Personally, I wasn't impressed. The interactions between the applicant and the residents, I think, was less than civil.
Uh-huh.
And so I wonder if there's some sort of accountability where, like, just like city meetings are recorded and put on YouTube, I wonder if it's unreasonable to ask the applicants to record their meeting and submit to us to put on the YouTube channel.
I don't know.
I feel like if it's being recorded, I
Did
feel
you
like
say
it's gonna.
uncivil?
What's that?
Was not civil?
It was just a lot of really passive aggressive comments. Just Yeah, it just wasn't very, very pleasant
Hmm.
from the applicant side.
Could you elaborate?
Yeah, so there was one comment that stood out to me, two comments that stood out to me, in particular was, there was, a resident had asked about, if they were gonna put in, safety measures or like a wall or a fence in between the houses and, the railroad. And their response in a not very pleasant tone was, the city doesn't require it. And so it was just this really dismissive kind of response, and their tone was worse than the words. The other comment that really struck me was the residents were making a point of, you're only going to build if you can get the zoning changed. And one of the applicants noted, we're pretty confident we'll get it changed. And I just wasn't impressed personally. So, I wonder if inviting them to record their meetings to be submitted to us so that we can put it onto the Orem website or the Orem YouTube channel. I wonder if it would encourage more accountability to be more civil with the residents, even though they're not obligated to. Can we create an environment that encourages it?
Really good question, and I'm not sure if we could. That requires Gary.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
might
when
need
he
to
comes
re-ask
back.
it when
Well,
he comes back. Can I ask a slightly tangential question though off of that one, which is maybe we need to go back to a more fundamental question, which is why do we have neighborhood meetings? What is the purpose? Are they legally required? Are they only legally required because
They're-
we make them legally
They're
required?
only legally required because you make them required. There's no
So this is
state-
something we're inheriting. Like,
Yeah.
this is just
Yeah.
something Orem does.
It's
It's
something
not
Orem
like the
does.
state requires them as part of the planning process. It's not like.
Nope.
Do
You
other
are,
cities
you
do
are
it?
the land use body, and technically the neighborhood meeting in a lot of places just happened for us, for example. That might have been their first, in a lot of cities, that would have been these citizens' first opportunity to say anything about the project at all. It would have come through, they would have got a notice that they get the cards in the mail. They come here, they make their comments at the public hearing. And that's the only meeting that happens about it that's public hearing. In Orem, they've had these neighborhood meetings. That's one of the things you do.
It's a great question, Adlon.
I'm betting it was, used to be required by law.
You bet you,
Maybe it was.
and it got removed so they have ease of
Yeah.
redevelopment without having to
Probably.
worry about the lot requirement. Well, we don't know. It would be good to get the history of that. But I think the notice, the neighborhood meeting and the cards that they received, they should be a bit more comprehensive with emails and contacts of who the residents can.
Yeah, but I'm gonna argue even if we want to keep them, because maybe we're asking the wrong question. Maybe, I'm sorry, I know you guys have
You're-
spent a ton of time on this.
But we're gonna cancel it
But-
off.
But maybe we're really dealing with a situation in which we're trying to solve something that isn't right. That maybe
Yeah.
it is, the neighborhood meetings are not helping in the way, because we don't find them
When have they
beneficial.
helped?
When
Listen,
they have-
remember,
that's
when-
exactly what
we
I'm
have
getting to.
never-
They've
we
never
always
helped.
had, it created contention.
Yeah, and the
Developer
only-
against citizen, which we need to listen to the citizen, but is there a different medium aside from neighborhood meetings? Or in addition to
Exactly.
neighborhood meetings, we don't know.
Well, it's supposed to be a medium in which the residents can communicate their concerns to the applicant, in which the applicant never heeds, and then says, we listened to everybody, we went and answered everybody's questions.
We
and
did what you
addressed-
wanted.
We did what you wanted, and it didn't do anything. So yes, the
We've heard
residents,
that, we've seen that before.
the residents got to express their stuff, but they weren't heard.
Yeah.
I wonder if we can open this up for public discussion.
I've been to lots of these neighborhood meetings. I go to almost every one I can. I would probably say I go to at least 2/3 of them. A lot of them are useful. I think it's the first opportunity that people become part of the discussion on what's going on in their community and next to their houses. Cause nobody talked to the neighbors about Wilkerson selling until it showed up on a card. They didn't come and talk to people in Peyton Crossing and say, hey, I'm thinking about redeveloping the land. What do you think? It impacts your property. I find them to be valuable. Yes, they can be contentious. A lot of times it's because what's going in, what's being proposed is so drastic from what's been that people are upset. They're going, you want to put a 5-story high rise on top of my house? which I'm using that example because it was just down the street from me that they wanted to do on 1600 North. You know, so yeah, people are a little wound up because they weren't talked about, and this is unusual use. I mean, it's pretty rare to want to put in, I want to put in a normal house next to your house, and it used to be a horse pasture or whatever. Oh, fine. Nobody complains about that. It's when you got oddities, and the builders know people aren't going to like it, which is why the combativeness is there.
Well,
And then, so there's one more, not just the competitiveness, the fact that they are confident the zoning was gonna change, which something we may not, we've heard rumors from
Yeah.
quite a few, from different sources, that some of the council have gone to them and says, wait till the next election and you get whatever you want. And that should not happen. That should not happen. And I think that's why we should continue what we're doing with the planning, with the city plan, and just put the guardrails and the levers in place where it does not become a leverage game between the citizens and the landowner either. That needs to be accomplished. And if we can accomplish it before May, I'll be happy.
Back to the neighborhood meetings, it would seem to me that the developer, recognizing the challenges that he faces, would try and curry the favor of the residents and hear their concerns. And this is a venue where this can be done in a more casual way than to just have it be in this setting where some people are reticent to step up to the microphone and to speak their piece. And there's dialogue that goes back and forth. So to me, the neighborhood meetings, I think, serve a valuable purpose, really.
Yeah. And I'm asking the question not because I'm trying to say, no, they should go away, but I think we need to step back
Yeah.
and say, what's the purpose of these and how do we use them? Because I don't think we can shape them and improve them if we can't even articulate how they help us in the process, how they help citizens in the process, how they help developers in the process, because they are a stakeholder in that process, right?
That's a good point.
Like,
Because
how
do we even know what really transpired from what we see, the comments? I don't think we get an accurate capture of what was discussed.
And that's why we've talked about having meeting minutes
Yeah.
that are more specific to try and get more
I have
accurate
seen
feedback.
good collaboration between neighbors and developers. You know, when they were talking about the Charter Canyon Hospital, they dialogued with the neighbors, they dialogued with Councilwoman Millette, they dialogued with me and Jerry about how they could make it more conducive to be more friendly to the neighbors, and the neighbors. It was a great discussion. They postponed it, came back with an adjusted plan that everybody was happy with. So they work really well sometimes, especially when everybody comes in with an open attitude. But I've seen them in very good spaces. Anything can be horrible. You know, I mean, that's just the reality.
But
of
you've
it.
seen horrible ones.
I
too.
have. I was at one where, let's see, there were outside of commission members and council members, there were 2 members of the public in it, and they argued and fought with the council members the whole time. You know, the applicant practically started yelling at the council members. So at a neighborhood meeting. So, you know, yes, they can
You
go
get
bad.
all sorts of things.
Yeah, they can go bad, but that's just life and reality.
Yeah.
I think they're beneficial, and I really love what the changes that we're proposing, because I think are going to make them better and more functional. And I don't, you know, the extra time, I do think people getting a notice 2 days before the meeting and then they had to panic and find a babysitter or cancel things is part of what sets the tone. And getting notice so that they can plan to be there is going to help set a better, more positive tone.
So if we're gonna go with the hypothetical that we're gonna stick with this and we like this, then what then becomes, what do we need out of the meeting? What should be getting out of the meeting?
Yeah. Well, and that's why I like the comments. I like the,
Do you like comment cards? Do you like?
you know, I like a section next to the roster, honestly, because comment cards can be thrown away.
Yeah.
A
The roster has to be turned in.
Roster can't be duplicated
Yeah,
so
and
easily.
we-
Yeah.
We've had developer reverse the vote.
Yeah,
Still 40-2 no, came 40-2 yes.
yeah.
So
But
we've
wouldn't
seen
the
that.
comment cards really be a validation of of what the person said? I mean, you had a roster with their comments.
Yeah.
But the comment cards gives them space to write more. And
Oh, I agree.
And they should sign the comment card. If you had a little,
Or, you know, they can certainly, write that you provided a comment card. So that we know that
That's
there's a
good.
card. That way,
That's
we know it has to be delivered. If you
I
throw it
like that.
away and they said they gave you a comment card,
That's
then we're
right.
gonna make you
That's
rehold
good.
the meeting.
I like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what aspects of the neighborhood meetings have you found not valid, but most useful, or what would you like to see? Is there stuff that was specifically discussed? We can't control the attitude of the developer. We can't control the attitude of the citizens. Like,
Right.
what is the purpose of these meetings?
I think the purpose is to inform.
To collaborate with the citizens as much as possible, and although that may not be happening or has happened before, but it in a way that's conducive. It happened a few times, enough for us to move forward with the recommendation. But also, I think in the notice, we should clearly spell out that you don't have to show up to it. You don't have to come to the city plan. And here's the emails you need to, is the plan commission. Here's the emails that you need to voice your opinion. I'd love to see 20, 30 emails from each neighborhood meeting, not just the comments. I'd love to see, because many people can't make it to either one of them. And I don't think they know they have the option to email.
And I was thinking about the same thing, that adding that to this, that they can send comments to the planning commission or to the city development, that may be a nice thing on
Yeah,
here.
and we need to really spell it.
Yeah.
Just like the state of Utah requires me to have a disclosure form in my contract in a specific font and size in order for it to stand out. I'd love for that to be also in a specific font and size, where if you can't make it to either the planning, to the neighborhood meeting or the planning commission, please send all your commentary requests to the list of emails. And here's a phone number if you want to leave a voicemail. They have to know they have options. They don't know they have options, and they end up not showing to either one of them, and we end up not knowing. So it's important that they know they have options, and I would love it to be in a specific font, different than the rest of it.
You can't hide it.
You can't just go ahead and make little. Yeah, no, we literally missed our disclosure font by 1 point by pure coincidence. I had a $537,000 in fines. So it's
Rebecca?
font.
It's a stretch.
And we were able to settle, thank goodness. They were
Good.
nice, but
Let me go to it.
I do just want to make sure that you guys know that the neighborhood meetings are held before we get their applications, and we review their minutes and everything as part of their applications. So usually they contact us and say, hey, we're thinking about doing, this type of development. How many people do we have to notice? And that's when we give them the mailing address list. And then from that point on, the next time we see their minutes or their comments, anything regarding the neighborhood meeting, is when it gets turned in as part of their formal
I see.
application.
So the comments from the citizen, if we disclose that, they can send, they could come in and there's no application.
Yeah, so,
Okay, I see.
yeah,
Okay.
that's where there could be.
It's a valid point. Yeah,
yeah.
you don't want to be bombarded by tons of comments and then nothing's going through it.
Yeah, but I
'cause-
still think that should be on the yellow cards, but I know that's a different discussion.
Yeah,
It needs
but it
to
ought to be.
Well, that would kind of move it more towards being part of the application itself, right?
No,
Because-
those are valid.
Which I
With
could
the,
see making it part of that.
Yeah, with the suggestions that we're having right now, it could be possible that they try to get a hold of us and we have no idea
What's going on? Yeah,
what's
makes sense.
going
Thanks
on
for bringing
yet.
that
Yeah.
up. I appreciate it. Okay, let's figure out a way for them to know that they can after the fact.
And that's a really good point on the notices that we send out for the public hearing. We'll make sure people, it's prominent that they can phone in,
And-
email in if they're not able to come.
Who pays for those notes?
They pay for it as part of their application.
So
We provide the notice, but we get paid for it by the applicants.
So, okay, and how much, in average, what's the cost?
What's the average cost, do you think? It's a few $100s.
It depends on the radius, and how dense the housing is around them, but usually it comes in at least 128 and up if they're in a really if they're surrounded by tons of R6, for example, they're gonna have more per mail that they're gonna have to send out. But usually on average, you're probably seeing about $120, $150.
Okay.
And that's for the postcard mailers that go
So,
out.
I don't see the developer walking at 250 to 350 if we make it more readable, more data. It's nothing in comparison to the project they're going through. They'll make the investment.
And
To the email comment, you could have the city have a dedicated email address just for these comments. And so they would come and be routed by staff to, oh, we got an email from this. So obviously that's what it's
But
for.
definitely
It's a
after
neighborhood meeting.
there's an application. Yeah, after there's an application, when we send them the yellow card, maybe that yellow card becomes something different with all the data available. Just to, it's a great idea on the email.
Oh.
Did he say I know?
Huh?
Great idea on the email, I know.
No, I said, yeah.
Okay, that's a great point. We'll make sure we take that as part of the other stuff that we're doing. But for this, I was gonna move to the next slide just real quickly to show you, because the proposal must be briefly described in the notice, just highlighting that again. I took a stab at making a neighborhood notice template for the applicants to use, for us to provide to them. Mine was ugly and primitive, and Becca's is elegant and useful. So you're looking at Becca's, not mine. This is kind of an idea of what it might look like. So and this goes down the middle to show you kind of what's going on. There's a banner at the top to show that it's the neighborhood meeting, so you notice it and realize what it is. Just a greeting, what it is and what's expected. You can come and ask questions, you can provide feedback or comments. The neighborhood meeting, where it's gonna happen and when. And then the applicant's contact information. I wanted to get to this at this point because of these conversations that are happening. If you can't make it to the meeting, go ahead and email the applicant and they'll include it. Hopefully, none of those comments get lost, right? Then in the middle here, there could be a vicinity map. This is showing a site plan, but really, as we were talking about it, oops, gotta go back. As we were talking about it, this should be a vicinity map that shows where that property is. So you see the address, but people recognize, oh, that's the school. Now that's my house. Okay, this is what they're talking about. So we want a vicinity map on the front. And then down here in the table, the project's name, what they're calling it, so that when they call us and ask, hey, when's this thing coming? We recognize it. Where it's located, again, and then a description. So we have room for 6-7 lines that they can write something. And then on the rear side, that concept plan, that layout, whatever it might be that helps them understand what it is. And then that can be what helps them in their meeting explain what they want so that people get an idea. And hopefully the meeting then, the tone of the meeting, as we're talking about, becomes one of collaboration instead. I know a couple of developers that have gone to neighborhood meetings or have had them on their own where we didn't require them as a city. And they come in and say, well, I'm not going to propose what I'm proposing without having a neighborhood meeting. So I'm going to go ahead, and they just flyer the neighborhoods and rent the school auditorium and have a neighborhood meeting. And I've seen them walk away from projects after that going, I'm not going through this. I'm not going to spend a year and a half in 7 or 8 meetings just to get turned down. So I said thanks and washed my hands and walked away. And other times I've had them come back and say, I got some good comments from them. I know what'll make them feel better about it and not be completely opposed to me. So I'm going to add those things, see if it works for me. If it pencils, great. If it doesn't, I'll walk away. That's a reasonable response. It doesn't always happen, but sometimes it's great. Like you say, you can't control that. But the more we require of them up front a little bit without being completely involved as a city, because it really is their meeting. We want to do all this, but we want to avoid having the neighborhood meeting feel like, well, this is Orem's meeting, and it's really not. It's Whitestone's meeting. You're going to have Orem's meeting. That's going to be yours. And we want that distinction to remain. We want to require all these things so that they have a sense of, that's the word I'm looking for, so that they're invested a little bit. So to that point, 3 weeks, great. Postmark of 3 weeks beforehand, great. You have to take the time, you have to spend that effort, and it means you've got to be prepared. And maybe it gives them time to think about it more It gives people time to arrange to be there, but it also kind of creates that expectation that it is important that you do it. So we're asking for this extra time. Any questions about the template? Is that the kind of thing you imagine for a notice going out to them?
I think it looks very official. I think it seems important, the way you've done that.
Mine looks like I did it on a 1984 Macintosh.
That's why it looks important.
That's Becca's looks good.
Yeah.
It's kind of embarrassing. So you're not going to see mine ever. It's buried. Now, on the next part of it, again, the question I had is, do we want to say the notices must be postmarked at least 3 weeks in advance of the meeting date? That means 21 days in my mind, right? So we're not talking about the business week of 15 days or something. I don't want to try to make that distinction. If we say 3 weeks, we mean 21 days.
That's a long time. Is that too long?
They may forget.
No.
No.
No, as we've established, Mike does not get anything until at least 10 days after it happens.
Because of the way people use mail, it's probably not as long as it seems like.
It also provides them time to fit it into their schedule.
Okay, like in my case, if I'm notified, I have to be notified like a couple of hours before to remember.
That's what your phone is for. You set an alarm on that. That's, yeah. So 3 weeks, we'll keep that if that's, is that amenable to everybody?
Rod, did you have?
Yeah, I think for those of us, I'll lump me in that category. It's up to us to figure out a way to keep track of our schedules, but to avoid the mail problems, et cetera, I think 3 weeks is a postmark's reasonable.
Okay, perfect. We'll keep that then. The other part that we talked
Hey,
about was
Jared.
increasing the, yeah.
Could, for just clarity's sake, since obviously it's 3 weeks, I mean, my suggestion would be that we just straight up put 21 days.
21 days.
Yeah, 21 days.
So that
That's what we'll
there's
do.
not a confusion on, oh, I thought you meant 3 business
Yeah.
weeks.
We'll be explicit.
21 calendar days if you want to be really
Specific,
specific.
21
That's
calendar
what,
days.
that's what we'll
Great.
do. 21 calendar days. Perfect. We talked about that a bit too, that we don't want there to be a lot of confusion. So if what we're all talking about is 21 calendar days, perfect. Then we know that that meeting happens and there's plenty of time for people to attend or make arrangements or make comments, send them comments. Notice the property owners within 1,000 feet. We talked about 2,000 feet. And as we started talking about what that meant, we got some graphics that showed that radius, 500 feet, 1,000 feet, 2,000 feet. Our question became, do we want to really do that for, if a subdivision, or let's say that a commercial site plan is going in and it's adjacent to residential zoning, it has to go through the neighborhood meeting notice. And it might be something as simple as a site plan change where they're adding on, a 500 square foot addition and changing the parking. And it's going to notice the neighbors. If we notice them 2,000 feet, do you want to keep that? Are you comfortable with less notice for that kind of thing? We just want to show you these graphics to make sure that we're comfortable with it. So this is Ken Garf, the Ken Garf rezone. That inside ring is 500 feet because they didn't have multifamily. Oops, sorry, giving away the next one. Because they didn't have multifamily associated with them, they would have done the 500 foot radius. The next one out is the 1,000 foot radius. That number right there is how many properties, how many parcels were noticed. 139, 372. When you go to 2,000, you get up above the 1,000, 1,300 different notices. And that's what that radius looks like. Just to get an idea if that's the way we're headed, so you know what you're looking at.
He's telling you, you know how many people will show up.
See, this is a
Yeah.
good example of what I was talking about obstructions.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And impact, right? If I was to look at this rationally, I would move it up because the people affected are north of Ken Garf, not south.
Right.
But we're giving a lot of notice to people who don't care
That are
because
across that road.
they don't live anywhere near it. And they may come across the road, but they're not as impacted. So that's what I meant.
So you're saying
I
it should
used
be-
I-15 as an example, but this is a great one of where I
Yeah.
would say sometimes the notice,
And if you get the larger, you do notice a lot of, and there's no way for us to really tailor it. Sorry, there's no way for us to really tailor it quite so much as to say, well, we're going to notice. In your case, we're going to go ahead and notice just this half of.
yeah, it's hard to, okay, State Street's a good delineator, University is a good delineator, but
we
it's
can't-
knowing those spaces and
So
maybe because Mike knows the area so well, any of these that are considered, he should review and determine
That's a good.
how many feet,
Yeah,
which
would you be
direction they
arbiter of
should
that?
be sent.
Yeah, there you go. So the case becomes then the question to ask yourselves, and this is what comes to my mind is, Mike's right. Most of the people that are affected by something like Kingarf are on this side. But the only way to get more than just this little bit in the blue is to ask for a bigger radius, to ask for either that 1,000 foot or the 2,000 square foot, 2,000 foot radius. And yes, you do in that case get a whole bunch of people that probably aren't impacted by it going, what the heck is this notice? But maybe you have to do that, sacrifice that to capture the rest of it, if that's what you're looking for. The same thing might be the case here. This is a typical R8 zone. The address that was used was 452 North, 600 East. In 500 foot radius, you get that blue circle, 1,000, you get that, and in the red, you get that bigger area. For things like zone changes, that feels like the thing you're really trying to capture the greatest for.
Yeah.
So that's our question is, as we look at it, this is State Street, where State Street might intervene, the same kind of thing happens. So on this side of State Street, maybe these folks don't care, but you might have to get that greater area, you're gonna have to sacrifice sometimes. That's the only way to get around the obstruction problem, is to go with the greater distance. So throwing all that at you, what do you think? Do you want to up to 2,000? Do you want to put like zone changes at 2,000 feet for the notice and leave other things at the 500 or 1,000? What do you think how do you feel about that?
I appreciate the graphics.
Thank
Just
you.
want to say that straight up, because that is, it really is different to see it visually, isn't it? And kind of have some numbers.
Roger from GIS did them for us. Becca figured out the addresses, figured they'd be good spots.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think for zone changes, 2,000 is necessary.
Yeah.
But anything else aside from zone changes remains the same.
500 or 1,000, because we have a mix.
Oh, 500.
500?
and then
If it's not
1,000.
zone change.
Yeah.
If it's a subdivision of some kind, most of our subdivisions that get dense are all zone changes as well because they're that PRD.
Yes.
But that could change in the future. So if you wanted to keep something like multifamily gets the 1,000 square feet and the other gets 5, and zone changes of any kind get the 2,000, that's easy enough to write as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like Hasem's saying, small things like I'm giving my neighbor 5 feet or whatever. Okay,
yeah.
well, why
Lot line
have
adjustment.
everybody come? Most people don't even care.
Yeah,
But,
grandma's adjusting the lot line with the neighbor that has always
Yeah.
been out of whack, and we're noticing all of those now. Probably not. Is
I'd be
that-
curious what you recommend from your experience.
I would say for things like lot line adjustments and smaller, I would say lot line adjustments and lot combinations, plat amendments, 500 feet is
500
fine.
feet, yeah.
500.
Beyond that, anything with a zone change, yeah, go to your 2,000. If you want to get past the obstruction question, you got to get past it.
Mhm.
It's a lot, but there's no other way to do it. I mean, you could split hairs and call it 1,500 feet or something if you wanted, but
No,
you really just,
this is great.
it's,
Yeah.
they're bulk numbers. The bigger projects, if a person is coming in and rezoning or asking to rezone from open space, not to be obsessed with what we just did, but let's say it's open space somewhere else. You're coming in and you're rezoning from open space and you're rezoning and asking for a PRD, and your density is going to be upwards of 20 units per acre. That's a significant change, and you should be prepared and okay with some work on your part to get that done. It just shows commitment. to
And if it's
everybody.
worth the fight, you'll
Yeah,
do it.
if it's worth it, they'll do it. I think that's okay. So, and we're gonna do some of that work for them by creating the list for them and putting on mailer labels, and all they gotta do is photocopy a bunch of stuff and send it out and have a meeting. So really, yeah, I don't think it's too big a burden. It seems like a lot when you're looking at it graphically. It's probably not a big difference, not as big a difference in real life as you're doing it.
Yeah.
But it would generate a much bigger meeting. And they probably don't necessarily want that, but we do.
On average, that means instead of 5 people, they get 15.
Yeah.
And we would the intention be to mirror this to the notice cards, the yellow notice cards?
Our notice cards are set by the ordinance right now, how far out we go with those. So you have to change that if you want.
Right, but I'm just saying, because I think it makes sense to change
Yeah,
that to tie.
Match it,
to
match
this.
whatever this comes in.
As we go forward. And in the meantime, if you make this change, these folks are aware of it, and then they're tracking for that and calling up and saying, even if they're not getting our yellow card right now, you make this change next week, and we start sending these kinds of notices out for neighborhood meetings. Even if those folks don't get a public hearing notice from us because we don't go that far yet, they're still aware that there's a project and they know that it's happening. They can check in with us. They've got our information.
You'd be surprised on how many people forget so fast.
Yeah.
I think we should double note. We should
Yeah.
We'll
maintain-
mirror it
maintain
if
the
that's
notice,
what we're
yeah.
gonna do. Yeah, we can definitely do that. And that's an easy enough change to make as well. Okay, so I think I know where we're headed with that.
Jerry?
Jared, I
Yeah.
have a comment here.
Uh-huh.
Are we talking about, for example, well, I'll use an example that specifically impacts me, and it impacts a lot of people. If we're talking about an addition on a big commercial project,
Mm-hmm.
University Mall, for example,
Sure.
I'll guarantee you, anything they do on University Mall
Impact.
affects everybody within at least 1,000 feet.
Okay, that makes, well, that's yeah, sure,
So
sure.
if we're talking about just one building on University Mall project, 1,000 feet doesn't do it.
It's a good point.
If we talk about the entire mall, 1,000 feet from there would cover most of it, I guess.
Sure. Well, we could remove the 500 and just say it's 1,000 feet like we were going to in the beginning, and just add the 2,000 for zone change stuff. Does that make sense?
We're up it for commercial.
Well, I was gonna say, can you tie it to a specific commercial
Yeah.
zone?
Yeah.
That's easy enough to do.
If you're C2,
Because
you
if,
have to
it's
notify.
small lot line in a residential zone, it's different than a lot line in a commercial zone.
Let me see what we can write to tailor it more narrowly then, because that would be easy enough to do, I think.
Oh.
So the distinction would be 2,000 for zone changes, 1,000 for commercial developments, and for smaller subdivisions or lot line adjustments, et cetera, that could be the 500 feet. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. I like that.
I was going to ask Commissioner Hawk's question, but he has left the stand. So, yeah, so I think basically we need to continue again so you can get the,
Yeah, I do need to make those changes, and then I have just one more. Oh, no, that's it. Those things, I think I'm ready with that. Just wanted to make sure that makes sense to you all. It made sense to us. We just want to make sure it makes sense to you.
okay. Thank you for all
So
your hard work.
continue to next meeting?
Yes, we need to.
No, the next one is the work session.
We
Okay.
need- yeah, we go
So it'd be the
mid-April.
April 16th or something like that, I think. I'll find it.
We had a chart in one of these pieces of paper.
In one of those books, does one of you have a
Somewhere.
It's
chart?
in your
in
book.
here.
There's a calendar.
I want to say it's April 16th.
It's April 6th. According to this, it's April 16th.
Perfect.
So,
I'm a motion that we table this till April 16th meeting.
Thank you.
Mike moved and Hasten seconded that we continue this item to the April 16th meeting.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Okay, the item is continued till the next meeting.
Thank you all very much.
Gary, anything?
The open house for the new city hall is going to be on April 27th, 28th. Somebody look for a Tuesday around that. That's when it will be. Staff is moving over, city staff, and things are going well with that. We also have tentatively scheduled, I believe it's May 13th, a joint meeting, Planning Commission and Municipal Council.
When?
May 13th.
I believe it's May 13th. Somebody take a quick look. Is that a Tuesday?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So that should be a council, their normal Tuesday meetings, and we're planning on an hour, maybe a little more, at like a work session. So sometime 3 o'clock or after. All the details haven't been figured out, but trying to just give you a heads up for that.
April
And-
22nd or
Yeah.
29th.
And I've told a few council members that one of the goals of this is not to talk about a specific project or anything like that, but maybe more high-level coordination issues and things along those lines that we would need to deal with council and planning commission.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. All right. Without anything else? We'll do that.
Then, what?
We'll do that after.
Yes.
Yeah, so. are you
Motion
gonna-
to adjourn.
You're gonna make one? Thank you, Mike. Mike made a motion. Do we have a second?
I will second that.
Okay, Mike moved, Rod seconded that we adjourn. Person.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.